Am I audible, sir? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, let me try. Is my audio clearly audible, or should I increase the gain?
No, it's audible.
Hello, Arshit bhai. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Your audio is very clear. Prasad, are you able
Okay.
to hear him clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So
Let
Prasad is
me
my
try
colleague
sharing my
from my
camera.
team, and he will be streaming you live today. So
Okay.
yes, so Prasad will coordinate with you very clearly. Okay. Video भी अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा है quality.
ठीक है, सर. In case अगर कुछ latency होता है तो let me know. Let me try sharing my screen once.
Just share your screen once, and then we'll admit the people in the waiting room. Prasad, किती लोक आहेत waiting room ला?
29.
Okay.
I need permission to share the screen.
Co-host नहीं केलं आहे का त्यांना? प्रसाद.
Ha, केलं.
Okay. Now I can share.
नाही, ma'am. परत चालू करतो.
Let me know if my screen is clearly visible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your screen is also clearly visible.
Okay. Let me do one thing. I will also join it on my smartphone so I can see what exactly is visible over here. And
So Arshit ji, we'll admit everybody. Okay. Hello.
yes, sir. Sure, we can. Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. So what will we keep the nature of the session is you can continue however time you want, but after 2 hours just give a 10 minutes or 15 minutes break, and then
Okay.
let the call be on, and then everybody can join in back. Okay.
Okay. So let me know, like, can I extend it till 3 hours? Because there it depends on the content and of course on the interest. But I will like make sure that it's in between 2 hours or 3 hours. But yeah, I am sure like it will be extended more
After
than 2
3
hours.
hours, you are saying you will give break. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, after, like I have break the session in three parts. The first will be the
Ah,
RF security, and if needed, I will be covering a simple part of like telecom security because it's too complicated to cover everything in a very small span of time. So just a
yeah,
basic
I understand.
introduction, like what a 2G, 3G, 4G means, and what are
No,
the
no,
security implications,
what I
and
was
then.
saying,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So whatever you are doing, just allow them to take some break in between,
Yeah,
so that
sure.
like maybe a water break or a washroom break or whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay, okay, and that will be on you. You decide when to give break and when to come back. So that's totally
Okay.
depending on you. Yes, yes. And I think questions, however you are comfortable to take in between or to take at the last, it depends on you. But we usually
Mhm.
suggest to take it at the last. The reason being basically that if people basically start asking questions only, then the session doesn't get completed. So that's the reason I was just telling.
Okay.
Okay, that you
Yeah,
listen.
sure.
I'm admitting everyone now. Okay,
Okay, sir. Yes,
all
sir.
right. All the way. Session doesn't get.
Let me know, like, can I extend?
What? Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today. Today we have one of the very expert speaker here, young and dynamic, and a very good friend of mine. And I know him like since now, I believe since 2015, and it has been more than 5 years. Basically, we know each other. I'll just give a short introduction of him. Today we have Harshad Agarwal with us, and he is currently working as a drone security researcher at DroneSec and a graduate student at Boston University, studying masters in cybersecurity. Also, he is enthusiastic about signal intelligence, drone pen testing, RF security, and IoT security. He presented his research at several international security conferences, including DEF CON USA, RSEC USA, HITB, Cyber Week, Hack Summit, etc. Lots of conferences he has already internationally presented. So he's also an international speaker. Previously, he was president at CSI chapter and vice president for entrepreneurship cell at MIT, where he also headed the team of security, giving him a good insight into cybersecurity, hence increasing his thirst to explore more into this field. He is a student programmer, researcher, and believer. So he believes in providing something out of the box. And thank you very much, Harshit, for taking out your time and joining us. Basically, he's currently joining us from Boston, and I appreciate even though there is a lot of time difference, you have joined us and you are guiding our all interns. So thank you very much, Harshit, for joining, and you can take over and you can start today's topic. Thank you very much.
Good morning, sir. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Harshit, sir. Your screen is
Okay.
visible.
Before I start, can I request, like, there is someone with named Mahadev. He is like doing a Zoom bombarding. So can we please take if there's
No.
someone?
Okay. Let me check. Let me check. Basically.
Yeah, before we start.
Yeah. So it is not Mahadev. Mahadev is our core team member, but I think somebody else is doing it. Okay. Actually, Arshit ji, what happened? Like last time also, there was some changes into the Zoom meeting and Zoom link basically, and that is where the settings change and people were able to do such things.
Yeah, like it happened in our university as well. So can we please change the security of our
Yeah.
Zoom so that no
Yeah,
one else can do it? Because like if we will start the session, they will interrupt in between.
yes. I'm so sorry for this.
No,
Let me.
it's perfectly fine. We know like there are people, so we can't do anything about them.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You can start. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, good morning. So, in today's session, like we will be discussing about RF security and cyber warfare. And this is like something which is a very interesting topic because if you see the recent war which is going in between Ukraine and Russia, then again there's a lot of things which is involved around the RF radio frequencies, and that's not only a war which is being fought with only guns and artillery, but also that's a war which is being fight in a digital aspects with bits and bytes. So in today's session, we will start with RF security, and on Telegram, I asked for the feedback. How many of you are interested in RF security or cyber warfare or telecom? So it will help me to balance it. So most of you are very interested in cyber warfare. So basically, I will start with RF security. For first half hour, like we will discuss about that because that's really necessary to understand how cyber warfare actually works, and then we will move towards the cyber warfare. So can you all imagine a world without wireless transmission? Life would be totally different, right? You would not be able to send a text message to your friend this morning, submit that assignment last minute, and watch that nail beating sports game last night that went into overtime, and you would not even be able to watch YouTube. So wireless transmission technology is pretty much an essential component to everything you use in your daily life. Television, radio, internet, telephone, smartphone, all of these are based off and require some form of wireless technology. Wireless transmission has a pretty interesting history with key figures who have made key discoveries up to this point. Who were they? What did they find? And why it's actually a security challenge today? This is what we are going to find out today. So I did like to quickly introduce myself. I'm Harshit Agrawal, and presently I'm working as RF security researcher. I am a master's student at Boston University. Right now, I am working on two security research project under two professors. One is on developing the malwares, and the second project is related to the RF, where we are trying to simulate the OSI layer by ourselves. That's pretty huge, but the main objective of doing that is to ensure like how we can transfer any text message from one person to other person, which is in a very secure way, encrypted as well as modulated, and then we are transmitting it with something where there is no possibility of MITM, or if someone eavesdrop the signal, they should not be able to modify it. So we are like using 0MQ and so many different blocks of GNU radio to transmit the signal through TCP. So basically in TCP, no one will be able to see what kind of data packet it's, because that will be totally scrambled. So this is what I am working on right now from the research perspective. So quickly moving forward, this session will give you the prospectus of the attack and defense in the field of RF security. Radio frequency can be a complex subject to navigate, but it does not have to be. If you are just starting with the RF technology, so it's pretty complicated, but not that much. As well as this session will act as a quick reference for those who know their stuff but maybe looking to brush up on some of the niche term to understand. Or this session is also a useful reference for security vulnerabilities we need to address in RF. So I am going to begin with a brief historical rundown of the development of IoT vulnerabilities, and after that I am going to introduce you to some RF concepts. So what is RF? Like, what exactly do we understand by RF? So RF signals are a form of electromagnetic wave, such as visible light, which make up a portion of electromagnetic spectrum. Now, this EM spectrum encompasses all forms of light, which ranges from audible frequency, such as the ubiquitous 60 megahertz, through the standard radio band, such as like AM radio, FM radio, TV channels, and other RF band. The spectrum continues through infrared, visible, ultraviolet, and then again we have so many different rays, but the main which is of our interest is, other than X-ray, gamma ray, is the EM wave. because in that AM wave we do most of the communication in our daily life. So radio frequency can be a complex subject, but let's see how we can make it easy. So this is the history from where it all started. On the left side you can see one image where there is like a billions of transistors. It's of a very big size, and it's very hard to program it. And now we have a chip which is like of very small size, and we can easily program it. We can do whatever operation we want to do. So wireless radio technology that is so ubiquitous today is relatively new. However, there is long and rich background that leads to our modern knowledge. The very first investigation of what we now call the RF spectrum came from the very early experiments in optics, electricity, and magnetism. So um, here you can see, like, just as the theories behind EM communication progressed quickly, radios have also developed at an astounding rate. Wireless telegraph like first appeared in early 1900s, and then we developed the AM radio. After AM radio, like we had the broadcast of FM radio, then satellite communication was quickly adopted, and then the Sputnik in 1957. So with the launch of like telestars and so many things came and back forward. So ground-based RF communication like also progressed from simple numeric pressures in the 1980s to cellular phones, and eventually the establishment of ISM band in 1985, which lead to our ubiquitous use of Wi-Fi. So these names and technology mentioned above should be very familiar, because these are some of the giants we stand today. So let's start with the history of the radio communication. Before that, I will like to share something. If you can see my screen, yeah. So it appears to be a very new technology. Just imagine the world before the radio frequencies. So we were all using the wired for communication, wired for doing all kind of operations. So imagine like the whenever we go in any kind of like a fair, we see someone like trying to cross the rope, and that kind of fun environment we see in so many different fairs. So there is no wire. He's just like climbing in the sky. How magical it would look like. Or it's like it is a bit freaky with this wireless technology that birds are not sitting on the wire, but like they are sitting in the air. So this is what wireless technology means in a supersonic way. So what have all the phone booths gone, because it's now all wireless. Something as well as like when I was a student, wireless data transmission meant passing note to class. But now we don't pass the notes, we do email. We do like we are sharing the sessions on Zoom. So it's this is what like wireless technology is allowing us. So it's really important to understand how we came toward this. I will now share with you like some of the secret of fast Fourier transformation, which are only known to a secret society we call like DSP engineers. And that for fast Fourier transformation have changed the landscape. So some of the questions like which we need to start asking ourselves is, why do we do digital signal processing? Because it is in our blood. Who uses DSP? Everyone. Why do they even use DSP? So we need to see this next four slides to get an answer. What our customer wants. Our customer wants a device in a digital signal processing way, which is having the all kind of functionalities, like starting from all the various features, functionalities which can cover many different spectrum, many different operations, many different modulations. So this is why like you might have observed whenever you go in your electric lab, you might have seen the vector signal analyzer. That is a very huge device, very expensive, and depending on like what kind of operations it can support, we have different kind of that have different kind of price, cost, and so many factors. So this is what our customer wants. Now what they expect us to pay, they expect to pay very less for a very enhanced feature, which is like practically difficult sometimes. And what they when the customer wants it, they want it very soon. So this the problem with the analog was like it was very complicated to design, it was very complicated to understand the ecosystem, how it is working. And let's say if I have developed a machine which is working on some modulation and I want to change the modulation, then it's really difficult for me to do that, because analog devices are built for that particular purpose. So let's say just an example, you cannot use your analog temperature sensor, which is like to like change it to listen to audio. We cannot do it. Even though we are using the same kind of hardware infrastructure, we cannot do it. We cannot easily transform. We need to modify a different hardware for different operations, which is like a very complicated and very expensive process. So what size customer wants? Customer wants a size which is small. So no one wants like a computer supercomputer which is of like a very big room. Now we have smart super like computers in our pockets. So this is what like Moore's law suggested. Every time we want something which is of a small size. And a short history of communication is like we have a better appreciation of where we are when we remember from where we started and how far we have come from. So you might have like remember this particular example which we all played during our childhood. And very early communication at a distance was like some kind of using the space acoustic or optical channels. So like playing the drums and whistles to communicate to some far distance that okay, I am here, that kind of things. Or using the cloud chapel smoke signals. So smoke signals were like mainly used to by so many different armies to give signals that we have did the victory, or is there any kind of incident happening. So smoke signals are like even today used many times. So these are like some of the things how we increase the effect of radio frequencies, and how the government initiated it, promoted it. So here you can see like how we step forward with the disruptive technology in communication. So we started with in 1450 with some kind of a German inventor with Jones Gutenberg. They developed the printing press. Then we came up with the telephone, and then in 1901 we had the wireless radio, and then we have the microprocessor. So every time like gradually we were increasing and disrupting the technologies, which is helping us in so many different ways. Now I can like switch to this particular slide. So this is how what the radio was during the World War. So imagine you are a military officer in World War I. Armies have grown so large, you can no longer communicate just by the sound of your voice or the wave of your hand. You need to synchronize movement of troops and artillery far and wide. So World War I is like frequently referred as the first modern war, since a number of technological inventions made their debut during the war. Machine guns were invented, then tanks, radio, military aircraft, and army started using the word war like with telegraph over wire. But they soon discovered disadvantages, as messages being sent on them could be intercepted. Troops were traced back by following the cable's network. The use of aircraft and tank also posed new conundrums. The solution was radio. So how like all of a sudden warfare had become mobile, and it is not possible to communicate with moving tanks and aircraft without radio. In those days, they had to just turn a dial, enter in a frequency, and press a button to speak, which also lead to security threat of message interception. And this is what we call the 1G. In 1G, if you know the frequency, you can like listen to all the communication. So that was like kind of AM or FM radio, we can say. So during the later years of the war, new and improved communication and electronic devices came forth from research and development in ever increasing number, which changed the nature of warfare forever. So as I was discussing about the history in the previous slides, you might have observed like what customer wants and how our demands are changing based on our needs. So with analog, the problem was like we cannot design different things with for different operations all the time. And when we switch to the digital communication, it's very easy. It's very easy to store information, to transmit information, to transform one kind of data to other form of data. It's very easy to do all things. So here you can say see the history of software defined radio, which was like first coined in 1984. And after that, this term was like coined by one laboratory, which is E-Systems, and then other companies soon followed. HDR was firstly mainly used by the for the defense applications, because they can like easily switch the frequencies, they can cover more of the spectrum areas. So even today, like all of the defense is dependent on HDR. And in our 4G and 5G communication, which is our LTE, we are using the HDR there as well. So is today's the world most widely used open source toolkit for signal processing, because we don't need like analog, sorry, we don't need the filtering amplifier, then FPGA and all of those things like as a separate unit. We can build it in on a single device to do all of the operations. And for the security researchers or for the cyber security community, this particular device and this particular cognitive radio came as a threat during the 2010, when there was a sudden explosion of RTL HDR, which was a discovery because the RTL TV dongles, there were TV dongles which were used as a general purpose HDR, and to like receive the TV signals in Europe, and I think also in USA people were using it. But someone like changed the frequencies and the firmware of it, and they were able to listen to other frequency band as well. And this is how we got the first very cheap HDR. And dramatically it was lowered because the cost of entry was very low, and most of the hobbyist and amateur activity in the radio world, they find it very fascinating. I think RTL HDR only costs like $10 or $15 over here, and in India like you can get it for halfly 2000 or 2500 rupees. So this is a really good start point to listen to all of the frequencies in the band of 1 megahertz to 2 gigahertz. We will be seeing in the later slide like what exactly the radio frequency spectrum looks like. So what is this radio thing? When I say radio frequency security, RF security, wireless security, so what exactly comes in your mind? When I say wireless security, please make sure it's not only limited to the Wi-Fi, it's not only limited to the Bluetooth, which we are using in our everyday life, or it's not only limited to the telecom. It's everything and anything which is wireless, depending like from right from your TV remote to RFID cards to the smart home devices, or your car key which you are using to unlock your car, your AM radio, FM radio, WLAN, Zigbee, LoRa, so many different walkie-talkie, so many different devices are we are called as a radio thing. So they are used in like your mobile phone, WLAN, all kind of remote controls. And utilizing radio technology is like one of those things we take for granted in our everyday life, but we don't necessarily know how everything works under the hood. So let's see to know about the wiggle.net. So here you can see this is wiggle.net. Here we can see like some of the different Wi-Fi devices or internet devices. We can go over here, you can search for any SSID, let's say Marriott, and this will give you the list of all the devices where it can find that particular SSID. If you know the BSSID of any Wi-Fi, you can go over here and you can search in that particular range or in that particular area. And there are so many features which we can use to do these particular operations. I think I need to log in before I can do it. So it will show you like all of the data points where that particular SSID is available. So it's like really interesting. And here the interesting part of the story was, so whenever I was like at a different place, that particular probe request can be listened by any hacker. and he can track that, okay, I connected to this particular Starbucks, then I went to the airport Wi-Fi, then I connected to in this flight Wi-Fi. So let's say the name of the Wi-Fi is coming as American Airlines, so he will know that, okay, I took the from the Logan airport, I took the American Airlines flight to Mumbai, and this is the hotel where I was staying in, this is the path I took for to this particular company. So whenever I am like return back to Boston, he can easily track my travel history. And this is why it is really important to forget the Wi-Fi which we have connected. So this is just like one simple example to let you know why we need to focus on the RF security. There can be so many things which you are not aware of, but you are transmitting wirelessly. So yeah. So who controls the use of radios? So there are some international communities and international organizations which decide on which frequency, what kind of information we can transmit, who can communicate on what frequency bands, then who is allowed with that particular spectrum. So all the laws, regulations, what kind of modulation, all of these things are like decided by some of the international organization. So in India, like we have tried to do it, TRAI, which is a telecom regulatory. You can check that. They often publish so many different research paper and advisory. So that is really interesting to read about it. In USA, we have FCC, which is like a federal agency of the US government, which is in charge of regulating the use of fixed and mobile communication systems in the US. So in your smartphones, like which you will always find the FCC ID, and through that FCC ID, we can find a lot of information about the wireless components. We will see it in later slides. So what are the radio frequencies bands? So far, like I was discussing about that radio frequency is vulnerable, radio frequencies this cover this kind of devices, but how we are communicating all at the same time. So it's not like that. Let's say if I am having a Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and um, just for an example, GPS, so all of them are communicating at the same time, and it's like a rushing in between, and there's a lot of interference. No, we have just like when you are traveling on a highway and there are 4 different lanes, in the same way we have divided the radio frequency bands. So based on the need, we have divided on different frequency, different wave channels, different frequency bands. So here you can see like VLF, LF, MF. So low frequency, very low frequency, medium frequency, then we have ultra high frequency. So these are all bands which are divided based on the needs, and different parts of the radio frequencies are allocated by the above the ITU or the agencies, organizations which I shown you in the previous slide. So just for an example, like very low frequency can be used, is mostly used by remote locations to synchronize the clock signals. For example, like we are using the long wave LF for AM broadcasting. Then we are using medium frequency for AM communication, and all of our walkie-talkie or amateur radio is working in that particular frequency. So in most of the, like I think in 19th century, most of the communication was happening in medium frequency and lower frequency. Then we have high frequency, so in which like we do amateur broadcasting, flight communication. So ADSB signal, which is on 1090 megahertz, like that happens in high frequency. Then we have a very high frequency in which like our radio broadcasting happens from 88 to 108. So FM is one of the example. Then UHF, in which like we have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, television, GSM, CDMA. So these are all the different bands. So, but it's really difficult to remember the band, like in which band, what exactly is happening in that band. I need the frequency. So this is like one of the simplest graph which I was able to draw. In this graph, like you can see the devices from 3 kilohertz to 6 gigahertz. I purposely drawn it in this particular frequency range because like here we can see all of the devices which we are using in our everyday life. So weather radar, satellite radio, GPS, AM radio, FM radio, you can see like we have divided it in different frequency bands. So Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is working on 2.4 gigahertz. Our GSM, if you are using the dependent on 2G, that is working on like 956 50 to 960 megahertz in India. And for 4G communication we are using like 1800 megahertz. So some of our walkie-talkie are working in 145 megahertz range. So this is how we divide this particular frequency band. And many cars are like, right now we also control it through GSM. So even more can be like unlocked ignitions from, can be started from wireless key fobs over RF. So all of these are subject to attack with very low cost tools such as RTL HDR, GNU radio, HEC RF, Blade RF, USRP. So invisible and ignored, our devices are currently screaming out large amount of information about us, about our habit, about our pattern of life to anyone who care to listen. We will show you like how you can listen, what is commonly been broadcasted, and what can be done with this information. So, and also like the necessary part is how we can minimize the risk. So radio frequency, I can skip this because we can, how is radio frequency? Yeah, this also we can skip. Yeah, so this is important thing. This is how our signals, like when we discuss about the radio frequency, so we do all of the communications with a form of some signals, a signal in which the original information is converted into a string of bits before being transmitted. So a radio signal, for example, will be either on or off. Digital signal can be sent for long distances and that suffer less interference than analog signal. So this is why like we use the digital signal. And for digital signals, like one more important factor was it is really easy to store it. So as I previously mentioned, if you want to store some information, remember the world when we were using, when we were dependent on the CD or DVD to listen to the music. It was really difficult to transmit it because whenever we were copying it, the quality of audio was degrading. So it's really difficult to store some information which will stand for 100 years or 200 years. Same thing was the problem with the printing. Same was the problem with the temperature sensor, because it was not so easy to store, to transmit. Then other than data storage problems, like there were so many different things or issues to develop it. And the calibration was again one of the important issue which we all were facing. And let's say if you have did some analysis and you want to share with other researchers to again move forward with data information, it's really difficult to do it. So the solution was digital signal, because it's like it was easy to store it. We can like do the storage in a very compressed way. We can play with the bits and we can compress it. Then again, it was easy to modify. In our smartphone is one of the example. In our smartphone, we can play music, we can listen to different movies, we can do call, we can do everything. So this is why, because of the digital signals, we are using the digital signal which our any hardware can very easily understand. So for that we are using the IQ, which is like in phase and quadrature signals. This is a way in which we are storing this particular signal in a digital way. So we do like a continuous, we take the continuous signal and we divide it in some discrete time, and then take the I and Q phase of it from the complex modulation. And this is how like we are using it. So just for an example, the simplest form of modulation is the AM scheme, then which is also known as like the on-off keying, which you will frequently see in all of the car remotes. Some of the angle modulation is like FM, PSK. Then we have pulse modulation and yeah. So what are the advantages of using the complex essential? Why we are storing it in a complex and not like we are solving the typical equation? So here you can see like here you can see the equation in how we describe this carrier frequency. So we have like amplitude of sine 2 pi f t plus phase. So it's really difficult to do all of the trigonometries, even if we want to add two signals, or if we want to multiply, if we are doing the amplification of the signal, it was really difficult. So what was the solution? When we do the same operations in complex, it's really easy, because in complex, it's simply an addition of the power, or in additions in the during it's really easy to convert our trigonometry to complex essential. So FFT is an algorithm that computes the discrete Fourier transformation of a sequence or its inverse, and it's really easy to play with complex number because it's an extension of the ordinary number which we use in everyday math. They have the unique property of representing and manipulating two variables as a single quantity, and this fits very naturally with Fourier analysis because the frequency domain is composed of two signal, real and imaginary parts, and complex signals shorten the equation which was originally used in DSP. And it also enables techniques that are very difficult and impossible with real number it's alone. So for instance, the fast Fourier transform is based on complex number. Unfortunately, complex techniques are very mathematical, and it requires a great deal of study and practice to use them effectively. But luckily for cybersecurity, we don't need to learn much of the complex number or things. We have tools to do it. And before going in depth, we need to understand two things. There is one analysis and there is synthesis. So whenever we analyze the signal from time domain to frequency domain, or if we want to find some information which is hidden inside the signal, we do the analysis. So let's say if you get some signal, let's say if you are doing a pen testing on Wi-Fi device or Bluetooth device or any kind of wireless device, so basically you get a signal, you don't know what kind of signal that is, on what frequency it is transmitted, what kind of modulation. So when you're doing the analysis to find that information, that is what we call the analysis. And let's say you have all the information that okay, this device is working on let's say 145 megahertz, and I want to transmit some information, and that information is need to be transmitted on FSM, frequency shift keying, and this is the modulation, this is the bit rate, this is the preamble, so and this is the data packet which I need to transmit. So you are doing a synthesis because you are creating a signal from your perspective. So this is what we call the synthesis. This is the simplest example. Now humans analyze complex signal, audio images in terms of their sinusoidal component. So we can build instrument that resonate at one or multiple frequency. So tuning fork or is just one an example. So what are the trade-off? So previously, as I mentioned, it was really difficult to get a vector signal analyzer because that costed around 10,000 USD. And again, it was really difficult because it was really difficult to understand, and only the peoples who were working, who are having the degree in electrical engineer were able to play with it. But when there was a sudden explosion after the RTL HDR, and these are some of the devices which we are using in our everyday life. These are some of the HDR which are also available to do the pen testing. So some of the reasons to replace the vector signal analyzer with this HDR is a hardware for implementation of radio networking. It can also do all the operations which our vector signal analyzer will do, but when connected to a computer, implementation is like a system on a chip. Higher end HDR have FPGA for onboard DSP. So I can, so if you can see me, yeah, so I have a Blade RF. So Blade RF is having the FPGA, and with this FPGA we can program it and we can do all kind of operations we want to do to develop any radio applications. And then again, I have this particular device with me, which is HackRF. So HackRF is not having the FPGA, but it is having the CPLD. So, but basically, again, we can do all of the operations which we need. This is a half duplex, and Blade RF was the full duplex. So it supposes IQ samples. And yeah, so these are some of the hardware. And on the software side, we have GNU Radio, Audacity, and URH, which are all open source. And I will strongly suggest you to check GNU Radio, what operations we can do with it and how useful it is for the security community. So this is how the physical layers, radio frequency looks like in the physical layer. So whenever we do any kind of operations in the, in cybersecurity, we mainly talk about the top 4 layers of the OSI, like application layer, presentation, session, transport, network, but hardly we discuss about the data link or physical link layer. So most of the attacks which you will see people discussing in security communities about the telnet, HTTP, SMTP, FTP, or on data messages, or segment like some of article something like heartbleed on TCP. So you will see mostly attacks on there, but there's a lot happening in the physical layer. This is how the physical layers actually looks like. The great line you can see is the place where some kind of data communication is happening, and that is at the frequency 107 megahertz. Here you can see yellow. So yellow band is, it means like the signal is not that powerful, and blue space is something where we are not able to find any data communication. So this is how like we can see with the HDR sharp or any kind of software. So for example, I will show that let's say if you don't have any HDR with you right now, so you all can tune to this particular site. Here you can see webhdr.org. If you will go on this particular website, you can find some of the HDR which are like already tuned by some of the universities or some of the organization is open source. So here you can see the HDR locations, what kind of band it is listening on, and with what kind of devices. You can simply click and you can listen to that particular signal. So here we can see, let me check if my audio is audible. Share sound. Yeah. So you can like change the frequency. We can find some information not on this channel. Let's check some AM radio if we can find something. I think 143. Okay, let's check this. This is based in Romania, and these are some of the frequency band. So let's see if we can listen to some frequency. So you can like simply change over here and you will be able to listen some data if the communication is going on. So you can try if you don't have any HDR right now with you. So after the session, you can check webhdr.org site. Quickly moving forward. So this is the architecture of software defined radio. We will not go in depth, but we have our antenna. From that antenna, we are receiving the signal, which is going to our flexible RF hardware where we are doing some of the initial operations. Then we have analog to digital converter to convert that particular analog signal to digital. Then we do the channelization and sample rate conversion so that our CPU can match the speed of the HDR. And then on the processing, we have FPGA, DSP, ASIC, or on the software side, we have algorithms through which we can transform that data, or we can understand that particular modulation, or we can like transform that particular bits into some meaningful information. So, and then finally we get that particular output data. While at the transmission, we have some our input, we are giving it to software so that it can transform that particular data into some meaningful information. With FPGA, we can program what kind of modulation we need. Then with the channelization and sample rate conversion, we convert that particular signal to 2 megahertz samples or something like that. Then we are converting that digital signal to analog, and finally we are transmitting with in the flexible RF hardware. Like we can do amplification and gain setting. Then we have what kind of IF band and all those things we can do over here. So this is how like typical RF looks like, and it's really interesting to understand the sampling rate. So sampling rate is something that how many samples we are taking per unit of time to convert that particular analog signal to digital. So this is how we convert the digital analog signal to digital. So more the sampling rate, the better will be the signal, the quality. And we can quickly move forward. This equation is really important here, even in the mobile radio communication, as well as when we are doing some kind of jamming. So this equation will always help you to understand like what kind of gaining power you need to put for your transmitter so that you can block other person's communication. So electromagnetic wave of the radio signal propagates under ideal conditions in free space in radial symmetric pattern, and that received power PR decreases with the square of the distance L from the transmitter Especially the received power PR can be described according to the free space model as a function of the transmit power PT, the distance L and the wavelength of the radio signal is where GT and GR are the transmit and receive antenna gains respectively. So depending on this, like you can decide what kind of jamming power you need to keep to block the other person's transmitter. And this is how like it looks like during the DB. Now I can quickly move forward to, yeah, over here. So where to start? Like this was some of the basic theory which was, I think, really necessary before I can start with the radio frequency stuff. So from the theoretical perspective, like we are done now, we can jump into some of the hacking. So where we should ask ourselves, like before planning to attack or secure any device, you should always ask yourself three questions. What does our device do in normal operation? How do they connect? And how will I know the frequency, like on which frequency they are working? So taking a look at the all the component, there is receiving stations, which set of alarms based on opening door, motion from a motion sensors, the pressing of a doorbell. We can identify like is it doing in normal operations? How is it connecting? So to answer that, like all of these devices are only connected to each other via wireless that we know. They are not really connected to any kind of local network or wire. So they all will be communicating in like any unknown frequency that we need to determine before we can hack them. So we are easily able to replay functionality when initiating actions ourselves with our hack RF or radio transmitter. And there is like again software tools available just as like GQRX, through which we can see the spectrum and we can try to identify the frequency in the free channels, or if there is something suspicious we can find. So let's see how we can do it. The first step is the information gathering. That information can be gathered from the hardware itself. So you can look at the device, you can gather information such as like what kind of device it is, what protocol it is using, can I find the FCC ID, uh, what, and through that FCC ID, like if we can find technical details like modulation, protocols, encoding, encryption, trying to replay, synthesize a signal for attack, then we can transfer. So these are some of the steps which we take. But the first step is a very good starting point is to find the FCC ID. When you get the FCC ID, that will allow you to publish internal and external images, user manuals, test results, and everything. So let's see one example. Just a second. Over here, like you can see the FCC ID of Apple device, Apple iPhone. And when you will click on any of the link, let's say I click on this particular link. And here you can see on the FCC ID. So this is how the FCC ID IO sites look like. If you remember, I mentioned about some of the organizations which monitors on what frequency band we can do what kind of operations depending on different country. So FCC ID database is for the USA. So all of the companies, all of the organization, all of the researchers, all of the manufacturing units who are using radio as a communication, or if they are selling any product which is having any kind of wireless communication, they need to follow the FCC guidelines. If until and unless they are not in the ISM band. But again, like in ISM band, they are required to follow the guidelines just because to make sure that they are not transmitting anything which is above 1.45 kilowatt. So make sure always and anytime whenever you are doing any kind of RF pen testing with any of your devices, never ever transmit above 1.45 kilowatt, else you will face the several issues. And one suggestions which I will give to everyone over here, if you are in a security, never ever mess with anyone who is having more time and money than you. So never mess with government because they will trace you. They have more money and time to do and play around with you. So you can find like so many case studies in which is happening in USA right now. So with that FCC ID, you can go on this particular site. You can search it over here. And what information we can find. So let's look here. We can find the frequency, on which frequency it is working. Then what else we can find? If you will scroll a little further, we can find the location, we can find the user manual, we can find internal photo, external photo, test report, and all of the details like when it was tested, who was the manufacturers, at what location, at what zip code. So many information we can easily find out over here. Um, if you will click the internal photos, so you can easily see the circuit. If someone is from the hardware security background, they can easily identify the components, and so many operations. Like over here you can see the list of all of the buttons which are available over there. Then external photos, we can easily see the dimensions. So it's really a good start to start with any kind of RF devices. And let's say I have a black box. Now I don't know the FCC ID, just as an example. So what we can do, so in that case you need to start from a very scratch point. You will tune your STR to GQRX or any kind of spectrum analyzer, and there you will be able to see the different frequency bands. So you need to find out the frequency band, frequency channel of that particular device by like pressing the buttons or checking like when it is transmitting, is there something which is suspicious in the spectrum band. So this is how like you will be able to identify the frequency for that particular device. Until and unless you don't know the frequency, you will not be able to do anything. So basically like you can map the frequency to IP address just for the understanding. So if you don't know the IP address of your the victim, you will not be able to do any any kind of attack. So this is what the frequency here means. And again, like you can GQRX is one open source software, so I will suggest you to check that. Without HDR, I'm not sure like you will not be able to do anything. But it supports like FFT, plot, waterfall. You has the functionality to record and replay, and the really good functionality is the TCP. So let's say you can tune your HDR and you can keep for your RTL with at some locations, and you can listen it from somewhere else. So it allows you to do the remote operations. Now, what are the importance of frequency selections? Like I mentioned before that we have 2.4 gigahertz for different purpose. We are using GSM on 900 megahertz. So how will I know what frequency I need to select? So depending on the size, radio wave loses energy every time it passes through a medium, and it is subject to like electromagnetic interference. The higher the frequency, the more likely they will be able to interference and distortion. And there will be some loss due to atmospheric conditions like reflection, refraction, absorption. And then again, like, is it on line of sight or not, or is there any path loss? So let's say if I'm using a device which is on 2.1 gigahertz and other device which is on 900 megahertz. So higher frequency, it means faster decay. So that particular signal will not transmit to a longer distance, and this is why your Wi-Fi router is having a limited range, while AM radio or FM radio is having a, like a range of 100 or hundreds of kilometers. So more what are why they are using the 100 megahertz, why we are not using 100 megahertz for Wi-Fi? Because like let's say if I am having a Wi-Fi router at 100 megahertz, I will be able to listen, connect to my, I will be able to access internet to up to a very long range. Then why we are not doing it? So there are again many factors. The first thing is lower frequency will have lower quality of data, lower bandwidth, and this is why we need for the Wi-Fi, like you will need a high quality of data because there is a lot of information we are transmitting, and we need some bandwidth. And so these are again two reasons. And again, you cannot transmit on any frequency, you need to follow the guidelines which are regulated. So higher frequency, like it can be easily penetrated through wall or poor penetration. So these are several reasons for the selection of frequency. Again, one more reason over here, you can see shorter range means worse building penetration and faster data, while longer range means better building penetration but slower data. So this is why like we have different frequency band for 2G, 3G, 4G, and or for LTE. So you can read about the 2G, 3G, 4G spectrum, how they are working, what frequency band they are allocated to, why they are using that particular frequency channel and not the 900. So this particular thing can help you over there. These are some of the modulation schemes. So we basically use ASK, FSK, PSK to hide our data. And this you will typically find in your wireless Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Wi-Fi is using the OFDM, but depending on like what kind of signal it is, what kind of device it is, we are using this different signal modulation. So we need to identify the modulation to do this particular attack. So transmit, we can either use a flow graph, or we can use the command line tools. So on the command line tools, like there are RF tools, RF kit, and on the GNU radio graph, sorry, on the flow graph, we have the GNU radio, which is like one of my favorite tool to work. And this is how GNU radio looks like. This is the blocks over here, which you can see is made up of Python. And GNU radio originally was written in C language, but all of the things over here, all the operations which we do is in Python language. So anyone who knows the Python can easily work around with it. And even if you don't know any programming language, even let's say if you don't know any of the electronic stuff which I discussed before, so easily you can do all of the operations, because you just need to drop and drag the blocks on the left side. If you can see over here on the right side, sorry, you can just drop and drag the blocks. You can join it just like a Lego, and then we can build our operations. So this is like how I was able to make a simple FM radio over here. I used Osmocom source in which I tuned the frequency, and then the Qt GUI sync, and this is how we can listen to it. So it's like a kind of a canvas in which where different blocks are intercepted to create a flow graph. And I will strongly suggest you, before attempting the quiz for today's session, go to gnuradio.org. I can show you the site. gnuradio.org. This is a site where you will be able to find a lot of information if you are studying and if you want to learn. So you can go over here and you can see a lot of examples, how to make a simple radio, or how is it working, what does the block means, what does the graph means, what is IQ samples, and using GNU radio with HDR. So all of this information you can easily find out over here. You can easily learn about it. So for some of the quiz questions, like I will suggest you to check like what exactly GNU radio means. So this particular page can help you over there. And then we can move forward. So this is how the signals look like in time domain and frequency domain. So let's say why this is important. Let's say on 2.4 gigahertz, I am also using the Wi-Fi and I am also using the Bluetooth. So there is some like kind of interference in between them, but how we can differentiate like what that particular signal is. So when we look from the frequency domain, we can see the different signals, but from the time domain, we will see like it's a kind of a mixture, like you will see the addition of it. So this is why like we use different domain for different operations. So whenever we are doing the, depending on like kind of analysis or synthesis we are doing, we tune to different domain. And this is like how the HDR sharp looks like. So on the top you have start or stop button. Then we can configure menu. This is for the volume. Let's say if you are able to listen to FM radio, so you can easily tune in. Then we have frequency input, center tuning frequency, and this is how the data actually looks like. I will be showing it as an example. Let me check. So here, like you can see, this is how the data actually looks like in the RF waterfall. So here the orange data, if you can see this particular waveform, so it means like it is having the more signal strength, and there is some kind of communication. So we can like simply click on that particular area and we can listen to that. Here, like if you will see slightly that this particular area is slightly not that orange or not that dark. So data communication is happening over here as well, but it is not of that high quality because the power is not up to that level. And other space which is empty, there is no data communication going over there. So this is how we can differentiate it. Here you can see I'm not having the HDR sharp, but this is the HDR console. So there are so many different hardware, or sorry, different applications which you can use. I can show you a quick example by tuning it to HackRF. Give me a moment. Here you can click on definitions. If you are not able to find your HackRF or any kind of devices, you can click, or you can search for different devices and you can click on add. So now, right now I have connected the HackRF. I will click on it, then I will click the save. Then I will select that particular device, what kind of bandwidth I want to use. So let's say I select the 8 megahertz. HackRF supports up to 10 gigahertz, 10 megahertz. So depending on your STR, you will see the different bandwidth. Then click on start, and we will be able to listen.
Don't come bitching to me because you
Side. Visit bloomberg.com/buyside.
had to have a white hot spotlight. You had to.
Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So here you can see like we have identification, verification, authorization, auditing, and accountability. So these operations we normally do when we are discussing on a top layers of OSI. But on the radio layer, like we have no mechanism to do the identification, verification, or authorization, or none of the company is like doing the auditing of the signals, like what kind of RF spectrum is being used in that particular organization. No one is using it for the accountability. So are they secure? Definitely not. What are the attack surface? So these are some of the attacks which can be easily implemented in the RF. We all know Wi-Fi uses radio to communicate, but so does the other 99 protocols that make up the world of mobile, cellular, and IoT. So some of the attacks which can be done on the enterprise devices can be sniffing, war driving, evil twin attack, replay attack, jamming, firmware, and we will be in the later slide. Now we will see the real examples. So sniffing is something like we begin with the passive observation of wireless network, and it is sniffing is noteworthy because the wireless domain enables truly promiscuous sniffing with no direct physical access. So method of attack is like simply you are using the radio receiver to passively receive wireless network traffic, and potential impact can be data loss or device or network discovery. Then we have the war driving, which is a type of sniffing again that refers to the act of searching for wireless network or devices. Its name originates from 802.11 war driving. Typically, like with the growth of mobile and IoT protocols, now we refer to the discovery to SN known 802.11 RF network as well. So method of attack can be like something of sniffing on a passive channels which are of our interest, looking for wireless network traffic that denotes the presence of a network. Active scenarios involve like attacker transmitting messages which is intended to abuse from present device or infrastructure. And in war driving, yeah, the potential impact can be discovery of devices and network, identifying exploitable devices. Then we have the evil twin attack. So if you know about the Wi-Fi pineapple or karma attack, so this is what like we do in the evil twin attack. So you can like easily match it with the Wi-Fi attack. So potential impact can be eavesdropping, tampering with network data, data loss, tracking devices. So all the attacks like which we do on the Wi-Fi is an example of evil twin, basically. Then we have the replay attack. Replay attack is something like it's a kind of a attack in which we can capture the data or capture the physical layer, all of the communication which is happening, and then again I'm replaying the same signals. So this is why I said like it is really important that if I have the security in above 6 layer of the OSI, but I am not securing the physical layer and someone is intercepting that particular signal and I am retransmitting it, he may be able to authorize and he may be able to gain the access because the information is not encrypted and that is not changing every time. This is the same signal which is getting transmitted every time. And the simplest example can be your car key. It depends on the car key manufacturer, so that is not a perfect example, but yeah, on your remote. So if you have see your TV remote, whenever you are pressing the button, it is transmitting the same signal every time. So that can be one of the simplest example. I will not say the car key because now they are fixed, they are using different mechanism. We will see the practical example of it. And then we have the jamming. So jamming, the potential impact can be like denies network traffic, disrupt the network state. The difference in jamming over here can be understand from the perspective of DDoS. So it's like very well-known attack on wireless systems because radio frequency domain can be thought of as like a bus that all wireless systems share. Loading it up with powerful wideband noise spurious traffic is a very effective way for denying a communication channel. So jamming in simplest form can be explained as like it can be conducted by transmitting noise within the target network RF channel that is at the same frequency and with sufficient bandwidth and power, we can do it. So let's see some example. This is like a very simplest way to do the replay attack, which I tried with a car in which I use the simple script HECRF transfer and HECRF transmit. R is for receiving, T is for transmit. This particular is the file name in which I saved that particular signal and then on which frequency we want to transmit it. So I just captured that particular signal and then as it is without any modification, without any changes, I retransmitted it. And do you want to know like what was the potential impact of these two simple command and HECRF? You can see over here, no, not this example, but you can see over here, I was able to unlock the car. This is the very simplest POC. I just recorded the signal. This actually happened with a very old model of the car. I think this car was of model 2003. So this car was vulnerable, but if you will test with the nowadays car, it may or may not work because most of the car manufacturers have right now fixed it with the rolling codes and they are using passive communication with the car key. So all of those things are happening. So see over here, when we clicked, and some signals will be transmitted from HackerF, and yeah, we were able to unlock the car. Same thing in a different way can be done with some modifications in the data. Like we intercepted the signal. We made some modifications in the data because we know like it was using the rolling code, and with some changes with the URH, we were able to retransmit the signal, and then again we can easily attack it. So you can understand like how easy it is to take control of your smart home lights or unlock any car. So this is one car key case study. I will strongly suggest you to check the roll gem device by Semi Kemker. He is like one of the expert in RF security. He was my early inspiration, and he delivered one talk in a DEFCON. So I will strongly suggest you to check that particular his talk over there to understand how exactly the car key and actually car key, RKE, and all of these factors work. So typically we are using the rolling code as an example to secure, in which, let's say, if I am pressing the button once, if the signal transmitted is n-1, so next time signal will be an increment of it. So let's say even if I record the signal, I will not be able to unlock the car next time because it is expecting a signal n. Next time it will be expecting n+1 or above that, not n-1. So this is the first way, but attackers found a way to attack it by jamming one device and retransmitting the other signal. So they easily got into it. Then we got the two-way RKE, in which we have a challenge response kind of thing. And again, it was very easy to attack it. And I will like to show you one video over here. Yeah, give me a minute. So you will be able to understand like how easy it is to hack any car. Give me a minute. So in this attack, like he was able to attack it with a simple hardware. He recorded the signal, used the Raspberry Pi, and you can see what he did. Nikhil sir, can you please quickly confirm if the sound of video is audible? Okay. And he easily got the access of this particular car. And there are so many examples. Like if you will see the Tesla, there are so many attacks which we have witnessed before. Then Ring camera hack, and again with the drones. So drones have itself like a very huge history. Then what are the safety features? So on the safety features, like we can have a cybersecurity mindset rather than to prevent injuries. So due to malfunctions or unexpected external conditions, replay attack disadvantages were like we don't even attacker who is having a zero knowledge of DSP can attack it. effective even if the message is encrypted sometimes. Disadvantages was like they cannot create a valid message from scratch. We cannot play with message. So let's say if I want to make some modifications in the original signal, or if I want to tamper with ID or any command, I cannot do with the replay attack. On the safety side, we have like a pairing mechanism, passcode protection, then authorization, virtual fencing. So virtual fencing is something like we are like limiting it up to what band or up to what range that particular signal can be transmitted. So these are some of the ways in which we are using it right now as a defense for KRK RKE. Another example is of ADSB signal. So ADSB signal is like a kind of a surveillance technology in which an aircraft determines its position via satellite navigation, and it periodically broadcasts it, enabling it to be tracked. So this information can be received by air traffic control ground stations as a replacement for secondary surveillance radar. As no interrogation signal is needed from the ground, it can also be received by other aircraft, which provides situational awareness or for the self-separation. So let's say if there were in early days in 1980s, 90s, there were many incidents that two aircraft came across one another because they were not informed by the ATC. So for ATC, like it was a very huge task to navigate the aircraft as well as inform them every time that whether they are close to one another or not. Then so they decided like we should come up with an ADSB in which other than the aircraft aircraft just communicating with the ATC, they will be able to see the situational awareness, where they are, at what altitude they are at what altitude they are flying, as well as during the emergency situation. It was really difficult for the ATC to keep track, because let's say if there is some thunderstorms and they lost the signal, it's like that particular aircraft is now lost in the air. So it was very difficult. So they came up with an ADSB in which every aircraft is communicating with one another as well as with the ATC. So even if let's say there is one aircraft which is not now connected with the ATC, but it is able to see any other aircraft in its surrounding, might be in a range of 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer. So with that particular signal, let's say if aircraft A is lost, that is transmitting the ADSB signal, and aircraft B is able to listen but not the ATC. So through the aircraft B, ATC will be able to communicate with the plane A, or they will be able to see the locations. So this is the benefit of it. And even we can easily see all of this data. So if you know about the flight radar, or there are many sites which provide live tracking of the aircraft. So you can simply go over here. I think we don't require to create an account, but we can easily track some of the aircraft over here by searching the locations, their route, or by seeing their particular directions. We can easily track the aircraft. So here we can see the live actual positions of this particular aircraft. So you will just click on that particular aircraft and you can see the information. So why they are able to see this information? Because every aircraft is transmitting this particular data. So you can also check it. But here we can also create our own receiving station with a very low cost tool like RTL SDR, in which you will be tuning to a frequency 1090 megahertz. And there are many open source software which are available, just like a dump 1090 or RTL 1090. Then we can also make a module if you want to make from a scratch in GNU radio to listen to this particular ADSB signal. So these were some of the aircraft which I was able to track when I was in India. These are the informations like which we can track over here. So all of that aircraft is transmitting like what is the location at which they are, what is the model, at what altitude they are flying. So we can easily listen to that information. You can also create your own live FM station. So just try to understand the kind of attack vector which is possible over here, that you are listening to a FM radio in your local region. Let's say your family is listening, your brother is listening to an FM radio to listen to some of the songs, and you bombarded that particular FM channel with broadcasting your own signal. So that can be easily done with hack HRF or any kind of HDR which can transmit. But you need to make sure that at that particular room or in that particular area, your transmission power is more than that FM radio channel power. So you will not be able to transmit up to a very long distance. But like if we are transmitting just in a range of 20 meter or 30 meter, then HRF can do that for you. We can also make our we can also spoof the locations of GPS. So GPS is like typically a navigation satellites which is circling around the earth. We know where they are because they constantly send out signal. So a GPS receiver in your phone listen to these particular signals. Once the receiver calculated distance from 4 or more GPS satellite, it can figure out where you are. So this is how the GPS works, and we all know about that operations. So how we can spoof the GPS locations? So US military, we know that GPS is mainly built by US military, and US government is operating it. So they periodically upload the timing file on a NASA website, which you can easily go and download it. Now we call it like the epidemics file. From cddis.gsfc side of NASA, you can go and easily download that epidemic file with its open source tools like GPS HDR SIM. You can create the particular with the giving the longitude and latitude. You can create a bin file or BRDC file for that particular longitude, latitude, for that particular time coordinates. And then you can simply use your any kind of HDR to transmit that particular signal on a frequency of 1575 megahertz, because this is what the frequency of GPS is. So if you will transmit that particular information, you can easily spoof the location. And here in this example, you can see like I transmitted that particular information and I was able to spoof the location. So this is how it will looks like in the terminal. I am purposely not showing it because this is going live, so I'm not authorized to do it. Some of the different attack vectors which we can do with radio frequency is the side channel attacks. So Tempest, which is like one of a very cool or very fascinating attack which came from the military originally in 1970. If you will read the history, like mainly Israel and NSA used it. So even if your computer is not connected with any kind of wire, not connected with internet, not connected with any other devices, it is isolated and kept in a room, still hackers are able to see what information is you are seeing on your screen just by listening to the electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by your monitor. So have you ever listened to a photocopier or a car engine to infer what it's doing? If so, you already have all the fundamental you need to study emission security. Be it the audible click of a relay, a whine of a capacitor, or the flickering of the lights when the heat comes on, this all behaves like everything is one thing is common in between them. They leak information about some internal state and reveal what is happening inside to an outside behavior. So when we view this information from the lens of information security, this type of electrical and mechanical side effects from the field of emission security. And Bell Labs like came up with these particular technicians and technology to where like United States Signal Corps were using it over the years, like defensive with the defensive requirements and certifications. The Tempest, which originally stands for telecommunication and electronics material protected from emanating spurious transmissions, they open sourced it, and now you can easily find the code of it on GitHub and you can easily try it. Another research which is Lemphone, that is really interesting. I think this was presented last year in DEF CON conference, so you can read about that particular research paper and watch that particular talk. So on a novel side, like this was a side channel attack in which they were eavesdropping through sound. So this attack is performed by using a remote electro-optical sensor to analyze a hanging light bulb frequency which responds to a sound. And they have shown like how that fluctuations in the air pressure on the surface of the hanging bulb, which causes the bulb to vibrate very slightly, can be exploited by eavesdropper to recover the speech and singing passively, externally, and real time. So just imagine like someone is listening, observing the light fluctuations where, because you are, when you are talking in the room, we never know that there's like some light fluctuations going on, but they came up with this concept and they recovered the speech. Like obviously there were so many different constraints when you will read that particular research paper, but again, even if in that particular constraint, if they are able to recover something like that, then you can understand like the impact of radio frequencies. One more very interesting research that came up from my friend. They were like a researcher in Carnegie Mellon University. So what they were doing is like in Internet of Things, they are made up of all of the communication between inhabited objects in a reality. So EM Sense, which is like developed by students at Carnegie Mellon University, Human Computer Interaction Institute, they were trying to link people even closer to those instant connections through the power of physical touch. So every day, like everyday items like toothbrush, doorknobs naturally produce some kind of EM noise, which we never know. But when you make contact, those electric signals circulate through your body. Yes, you are conductive. Imagine a map like which is showing, imagine a map app which is showing you a shortcut on your smartwatch simply because you straddle a motorcycle. EM Sense like enables you to that particular technology, like to touch identification, authentication, and all kind of custom DIY experience. So whenever you are touching the any object, it will let you know based on that particular EM signal that what kind of object you are touching. So here you can see one example. When he was like keeping his hand on the motorcycle, it was recognized as motorcycle. When they were using different touch, so they were able to identify between, differentiate between the user A and user B. Or when he was like holding the doorknob, he was able to see some different information. So this is again like one really interesting research paper which I will strongly suggest you all to read it. And then we have GSM. So I think we can quickly take a break of 3 or 4 minutes. So we can take a break of 4 minutes, and after that we can start with cyber warfare. So yeah, so I think that will be an interesting topic because this is enough for the RF frequency, and then we can start with uh, cyber warfare. So you all can come in 4 minutes. Please let me know in the chat session if you need a slightly more longer break of 4 or 5 more minutes. Then let me know in the chat session, because now we will be discussing about the cyber warfare, which is interesting topic. And I know like radio frequency was something which is difficult to understand, because this is not something which we are doing in our everyday life. Let me turn off this off first. Yeah, so that is not something like which we are using in our everyday life, because that is something which comes from the electronic background. So it is difficult to understand, but believe me, when you will start reading about some of the basics of it, you don't even need to understand like how exactly that stuff is working. It's really easy to grasp, so you don't need to learn all of the complex equations. But when I'm like you are studying, it was important for me to explain, so that you can plan all of the attack vectors, or whenever you are reading any kind of research paper, you should be in the position to understand that what exactly it means, or how exactly we are able to transmit information from our mobile phone, or from all of the RF devices which we are using. So just for that reason, like that was purposefully I included those complex equations in the starting of the slide. So you don't need to understand everything, but just the concept like why RF security is very important. So that was the key reason. If everyone is here, we can start. I can wait 1 more minute and then we can start. Okay, let's start with the session. I will suggest you all to take the screenshot of this particular screen, because in cyber war, there may be some of the terms which you are not aware of, or from the military perspective, I'm using it. So take the screenshot of it. That will help you to understand sometimes what that particular acronym means. I will try to avoid as much as possible to use the acronym, but still I will suggest you to take a screenshot of it for your future references. So whenever I will say the EW, it means electronic warfare. Then RCS, I will be using this. So that is the radar cross section. I will be explaining what does that mean. Then again, I'm not including these particular slides over here, but AESA, so that is active electronic scan array. You can just, AESA is kind of a radar. And is there any other something? Yeah, I'm also going to use RCIED, which is radio controlled improvised explosive devices. So this is like what we see as an remote control bomb in general operations. Okay, so now we can start. So right now we all know that there is a war going on between Ukraine and Russia. What is something which is really important for us as an Indian to understand, or how you see that particular war? So every battle is won before it is fought. How? That particular this quote, like from the 6th century Chinese general Sun Tzu, has never been more relevant than in the 21st century. So military operations today are being undertaken via a smartphone as much as it is being conventional forces. So today war are not fought by tank, aerial bomber or daring infantry only. Battles in the 21st century are fought in the cities, college campuses, internet forum, social media news feed, and a very well timed tweet, an errant Facebook group, or a seemingly harmless WhatsApp forward holds the potency to be even more dangerous than artillery fire and airstrike. So while the above may be considered a stretch or a radical statement, but it does hold water. Let me give you some of the examples. If you know, right now, when I say there's a war going between Russia and Ukraine, just a minute. Yeah. So when I said it, uh, there is again one more war other than artillery, which is the cyber war. You might have heard about the Huntik where ransomware. Then we are also seeing so many different continents where that is again like in the picture now. Lazarus group is doing some other kind of attack. Then anonymous groups are like fighting with Russia. So all of this is like a digital confront. They are fighting a digital war, which is not with the artillery, but with the bits and bytes. And in this today's information dominated security landscape, a man with a smartphone has the capability to do uh, a man with a smartphone has the capability to organize widespread hate, radicalize youth, manipulate public opinion against a country's own military action, and crippling a nation's ability to fight a conventional conflict. And this is like something as a misinformation we have also seen during the time of COVID, because many people try to do or spread some misinformation. So this is what the information warfare looks like. So information, and this is why it's important to understand what information warfare is before I can proceed with electronic warfare or the subset of it, or before I go in depth to the cyber warfare. So every day there's war taking place on your own device, in your own pocket. There's been plenty written about this. I won't retreat it, but I do want to say that this war is far more aggressive, strategic, and frankly successful than you can imagine. This new era is not capturing land as in previous conflicts. Instead, in the information war, the territory being won is the human mind. So the most visible battle space are our online forums like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And in traditional media outlets, World War III is a guerrilla information war with no division between military and civilian participation. Here is how this warfare works. So let me come up with a quick example. Okay, so digital combatants often we thought of as like a troll. Let's say you pick a story to amplify, often with a short term news hook. They create a meme, a video, a tweet, or a blog post. The trolls use a mix of human assets and automated personas to amplify the stories. That particular message is then pushed into the feeds of like a sympathetic real people who will amplify it further. If it goes viral or triggers a trending algorithm, it will be pushed into the feeds of a huge audience. Member of the media will cover it, reaching millions more. So can this problem be solved with a better automated review and editorial? Hardly. If the content is deemed false, it does not matter. It will be taken down. And if the amplifier bots get shut down, that really does not matter, because they will easily try to replicate it in the future. And as we convincingly predicts it, it will get even more worse. So this is how like the information warfare looks in a very dominant way. And just for an example, right now Russia was blocked by many different companies. Facebook is yesterday only I was reading one news. If you can go and check the Facebook official statement which they made yesterday, and I was very shocked because in that Facebook made a very radical statement that they will be blocking Russia to share any kind of information which is related to the Ukraine Russia war, but allow Ukraine to make any statement which is against Russia. So this is what the information warfare looks like, because they are blocking someone but allowing someone. And then Russia came up with like their own TLS certificate to authorize the network, so that they can easily allow different sites. So that is like again very interesting stuff going on in the cyber front. So how exactly the military or defense see the information warfare? This image explains what activities are conducted in information operations. So these include like acquiring, using, protecting, managing, exploiting, and denying information. These activities take within three interrelated components of information operations. So which is like operations, relevant information, and then intelligence. So these components operate within a battle space information environment, where organization conduct these IO activities as part of like a dynamic, iterative process to support each component in an integrated dimensional operations. So in acquire, like you will start with the acquire, where commanders try to consider the nature of the information which is required. So initial questions will include something like what information is needed, what is the nature of data information, how can that information be acquired. So after that, like after getting that particular information, how they are using it to do the infosys, and then manage that particular information to do up from that infosys, like is there electromagnetic spectrum kind of attack we can do, or what exactly we can plan from that, like horizontal and vertical integration of it, resolving differences among different information from multiple sources. Then comes the communication. So in communication, like intelligence collection, jamming, resolving electromagnetic interference, then protection. So this is how like they plan and they come up with exploit and deny, in which they are using the command and control actions. So this is how the military sees it. So they are like constantly monitoring your media, in which all the news channels are there, internet forums are there, national information infrastructure, then World Health Organization, what they have to share, or a global information infrastructure. Everything is being monitored, even all the political decisions. So this is how the military infosys looks like. So what do you think of a world where every device you own is communicating with each other to do your daily task? Your CCTV camera can easily identify and stop excessive force before it turns deadly, or to wearing sensor which reports in real-time health data to alert patient to emergencies before they happen. Even as drones being used as to supporting first responder, IoT has transformational impact on our life across vertical sector. And social credit system, which is like really thing which is happening in China, did idea to all aspects of life, judging citizens behavior and trustworthiness. So quote jaywalking, don't pay a code bill, or play your music too loud on the train, you could lose certain rights such as booking a flight ticket or train ticket. So this is happening. And privacy is dead, of course. There's a whole long story of task that IoT is helping us with. So we can say a world without IoT is like driving in a stone age. It may seem like a big claim for some of you, but when you see the bits of IoT reflected in even mundane tasks of our daily life, you will agree to it. So how important is the Internet of Things in our life? And even question is how secure you think it is. So the benefits of IoT are obviously undeniable. IoT can bring much of the physical world, from industrial assets to commonplace devices, to people in a connected ecosystem, resulting in an enhanced customer experience and a better business outcomes. So definitely increased connectivity and digitization in industry has produced an exponentially expanding attack surface, behind which is safety, security, and critical services. But this increase in power and connectivity has largely happened without designing inadequate security protocols. So here you can see like how in different verticals, from IT, public safety, digital health, mobile industries, smart cars, smart cities. Then again in that particular IT, like you can see the different domains. So how we are dependent on this IoT transformational vector. This is one simplest example. So in simple word, like I can say IoT is a kind of a broad network of connected physical objects or devices that communicate with each other and exchange data without human interference. So generally all of these devices are capable of like collecting the data, processing information, and then transferring that particular data. Now IoT is wonderful in many ways, but unfortunately technology has not matured yet. It is not entirely safe, and the entire IoT environment from manufacturer to user still have security challenges to overcome, such as like manufacturing standard, update management, physical hardening, user knowledge and awareness. So now it is not only with our computer, but there are also things that interact with the internet without our intervention. These things are continually communicating with the internet at all different layer, and you all might be very aware of these particular attacks like with Sodan and Sensis. So you can perform so many different, you can search for the IoT devices which are vulnerable, and you can perform operations. So I think I should not give much time on this. We all know about the CIA triad of IoT security, like how confidential, how confidentiality it is maintaining, is it available or not, what kind of integrity we have, like from the cryptographic hazing, is it public key infrastructure is like very important but very difficult to implement in IoT devices. The authentication mechanism, implementing the crypto highly based cryptographic algorithms, it's really difficult because of the low power devices, low processing units. So here you can see like IoT security threat map. Other than threat map, I will pay more attention on the right side, which here you can see the pyramid of pain. So pyramid of pain, this is like from the Cisco IoT reference model, and it is evaluated from a vulnerability perspective of the IoT system. So the most vulnerable part of the IoT system with the least impact if suffered an attack is placed on the top of the pyramid, which is the sensors which sit on the top. But for me, the next vulnerable part is like communication, but the most important is the computational or analytics platform where like your FPGA or all of the hardware abstraction is taking place. Why? Because at that particular layer, there was one very interesting research paper. I'm forgetting the name. I can check and like later put it in the Telegram channel. But in that research paper that was published in 2013 by some Chinese researcher, and they discovered that with just 1500 logic gates, they can create a backdoor in any of the hardware devices or any system on chip devices. So typically like all of our hardware devices contains of millions or billions of transistors, and in which like just having a 1500 logic gates to create a backdoor, you can imagine like what can be the catastrophic circumstances of it. Right now for our telecom industry, we were all dependent on the China, and this is why all of the countries including USA imposed a sanction ban on Huawei, and this is why India is not using any kind of that particular telecom devices for building our telecom infrastructure, because it was said that they are having some kind of chip which is installed through which they were able to exfiltrate the data when they need, or they were easily able to intercept the data. And detecting 1500 or something like a very lower rate, it's really difficult. So on a general purpose, like there are many guidelines through which, or frameworks which we follow when we import any kind of hardware. But typically the probability of detection for the military, I'm not talking for the commercial devices or the company, I don't know what kind of frequency probability they have, but for the defense I know that they can detect up to a 0.006%, which is very very low. But again, with 1500 logic gates, even it's difficult for them to identify. So to, if someone have created a backdoor, of if there is some kind of faulty things happening in background, so even it's really difficult for them to identify. So I will share that research paper once I will find it. Let's consider one more two simple case studies over here. For example, at a Department of Defense, a fuel depot, tank level, temperature, flow rate could be inexpensively and precisely monitored with the use of IoT. And inventory usage and payment could be easily integrated with the backend business systems. Perimeter security could be enhanced with more inexpensive cameras and motion sensors. In the same way, like soil, water, and air quality could be easily monitored for any lease. But imagine the havoc that could be caused by a malicious actor hacking into this IoT tank farm. If the typical IoT vulnerabilities are not addressed, tank level could be misreported, monitoring could be disabled, and malicious actors could dump fuel. In similar way, with the addition of internet capability, real-time situational information can be relayed to command and support facilities remotely from the battlefield. But if enemies take advantage of vulnerabilities in such devices or networking or compromised devices, it may allow the enemy to provide false information to the warfighter and supporting remote organizations. These all things we have covered, so I can quickly move forward to the slides. Okay, so what is electronic warfare? So electronic warfare is came a very long way from early days of signal intelligence to a wide variety of technologies and use cases. So let me make it clear that it might be difficult for you to understand, it might be difficult for you to grasp some of the concepts. So this is just for your information that how exactly our defense work, or how exactly we are protecting our nation from all of these particular threats. So this is just for your knowledge. So you are not supposed to like understand everything, or but yeah. So all modern forces like conduct operations that depend on the use of EME. The recognized need for the military forces to have access is to create EME vulnerabilities and opportunities. So brief history is something like electronic warfare has come a long way from early days of signal intelligence, as I mentioned. So here you can see like from in Russo-Japanese War, the birth of signal intelligence took place, in which they were able to record the signals and identify the source of intelligence, from where they are doing the communications, and all those things they were able to track. Then during the British invented the invention of the British signal intelligence in 1914. While there was no organization in UK which was responsible, but they were able to monitor so many different things, like decrypt the encrypted messages. And then Battle of Britain, in which the radar took the birth. That was a breakthrough in radio transmitter, because the resonant cavity, magnetron, detectors arranged at very different heights and angles can be picked. They can easily track the different aircraft, the positions, and they can plan their war strategy in a very effective way. Then again, like the Enigma was broke. So many different things were happening during that time. During the Cold War, there was like industrial scale jamming, in which like they were able to block more than 1700 stations which are operating with an estimated and combined output power of 45 megahertz, 45 megawatts. So this was a very huge industrial scale jamming which happened during the Cold War. Then Cuban Missile Crisis, in which they tried to deceptive the drones. So yes, we are having the drones from that particular times. It's not like we are having the drones now. Then Battle of Latakia, so many different wars happened. But see over here, the interesting to note is the Gulf War in 1991, in which GPS was at war. So what is that? Like what exactly happened? So with target tracking and smart missile guidance, the Gulf War highlighted the susceptibility of GPS to jamming with even more relatively unsophisticated device, where like they easily blocked the GPS by vulnerability the jamming and spoofing. And this is again like happened during the 2003 war, during the Iran and Iraq, and even during the war of Ukraine and Russia. During like there was not a war, but it was a conflict in 2014, if you remember. So during that time also, like there was some deflection which happened with the GPS and with the GLONASS. So because all of the things, people were the countries were using the GPS to navigate their satellites at that time, and if the GPS will not work, they will not be able to guide their missiles, and this is why they jam the GPS. Then during the Stuxnet, like which was a weaponization of the cyberspace, we all know what Stuxnet originally did. Then Edward Snowden came, and then he exploited, like explicitly mentioned all of the things which US or Israeli governments are doing to do the surveillance, to do different kind of attacks, or what kind of tools they are having. And then what else, like let's say if we have the quantum computers in 2018, we had that, and we are not right now sophisticatedly able to break the algorithms. But if in case if we are able to do that in future, definitely we will be able to sometime in future, that will break the so many different things, like so many secrets can be easily known. So this is how like electronic warfare actually looks like. They are divided in three different components. So we just for a quick introduction, like electronic support is something which is supporting our enemy, our infosys to identify or track the enemies or their battle tanks or their aircraft or their radio. Then electronic counter is something in which we are using different kind of things like active or passive, so deceptions or some kind of attacks which we are doing in the counter to protect ourselves. And then countermeasures, so if that counter doesn't work, what are the different countermeasures? So this is how we divide it. So just for an example, here you can see like electronic attack is something which involves the offensive use of EM energy, directed energy, or anti-radiation weapons to attack personal facilities or equipment. So all of your electronic intelligence, communication intelligence, that all comes into these. So four classes of electronic attack is jamming, modifying, modifiers, then physical destructions, or on non-destructive side, we can do jamming, noise, spot, barrage, sweep, chaff, flares. These are all the different kind of non-destructive electronic attack. So here you can see like how exactly it electronic attack warfare support and everything looks like. So you have an enemy radar over here at the lower bottom side, if you can see, that can be easily blocked with the EA6B prowler. That is having the capability to block the radar, and with that radar, like with that technology, they can easily block the enemy radar, and enemy radar will not be able to detect the other aircraft. And this is what, like whenever you will see any kind of military convoy, or not only the military convoy, but whenever you will see like our president or our prime minister or any chief minister is visiting, you will see a car in front of them which is having some kind of antennas. So that antenna is like blocking the signals. They are trying to detect the unknown signals which are not in GSM, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth bands, but some unknown signals. So they are trying to analyze what kind of that signal is, trying to analyze the direction of it, to geolocate it, to block it if it is suspicious. Or let's say if someone have planned the remote control improvised bomb, so they can easily block that device so that no one will be able to detonate it. Even like let's say if there is some set weaponry which is being fired, so they can easily track and take actions on it. So this is how like we have the radar. So we can quickly skip to these slides. This is again very interesting to understand. Whenever we talk about any kind of radio frequency devices, it can be our smartphone to any kind of like a big radio devices. There are few factors which are interesting and important to understand. The first is the bandwidth, then the type of antenna we are using, the transmitter, the receiver, the propagation, who is the target, and the basic of it is like what is the capability of enemy, what kind of radar they are using, like the fundamental parameters, then on what frequency change is there, so we can listen to that. Then PRF, we can measure that, pulse length. And here you can see one example. Let's say my transmit power is 100 kilowatt and I'm transmitting with a wavelength of lambda. Then my power reaching to a aircraft which is at a range of R will be GP by 4 pi R square. Now the important factor here to notice is G and P is my power. G and 4 pi is G by 4 pi is constant, and R square is the reverse improportional of the distance. So every time with increase of a distance, the power will decrease to the receiver, and the reflected power is associated by GPA by 4 pi R square. So even if I transmit my signal with 100 kilowatt at a distance of 10 kilometer, my received power at the receiver will be in picowatts. So you can understand like how many signals or how many power actually we get lost. And this is really important. This is why like we don't see any kind of satellite attack right now. Like just from Earth, we are jamming the satellite which is in the space, because the received power at the signal will not be that effective. We cannot easily jam the signal satellites easily, and this is why we are coming up with like anti-satellite weapons, or we are placing the satellites in space which can easily jam the other satellites, so that the effective distance will be less, and we will need the less transmission power. Then these are some of the radar cross sections. So radar cross section is really important to understand how exactly this is happening. So you can know if you just observe over here. So F15 is having the radar cross section of 10 to 15, while the F22 Raptor is having a radar of section of 0.0001, which is like a very low. So it's like on a radar screen. If for the same size of aircraft, let's say F16 is visible at a size of 5, which is like if it is visible to a size of a room. So at the same time, with the same aircraft at the same location, with the same distance, with the same radar, the F22 radar will looks like a B on the radar. So you can imagine like how important radar cross section is. Let me check what other slides I can share from this presentation. Yeah, I can share this. So jamming, this is really important to understand how exactly it looks like. So let's say I have a target over here. I want to jam that particular frequency. So what I'm actually doing, I'm using an ideal jammer. So an ideal jammer is something like which is kind of a block, which is creating a kind of a mountain of noise in that particular frequency channel or on that frequency domain, so that the true information will not be transmitted is very easily. So if you remember, like when I was showing you the HDR sharp or the screen in which I was able to listen to the FM radio, we can easily on that particular channel, like the I mentioned that the orange part was like the transmitted power where we can receive the signal. So if you will jam, if you will transmit a more noise, like a kind of a garbage on that particular channel, you will not be able to listen to the that particular actual signal. So it's like there are two peoples in a room. They were easily communicating with one another. The third person came and he's playing a DJ in that particular room, or he's shouting very loud, so that those two people will not be able to communicate very easily. So this is what jamming in actual means. There are different kind of jamming which defense is using. So there are spot jamming, sweep jamming, digital frequency radio memory kind of jamming, so that you all can read about if you are interested. So rather than like there are many times it happens that the communication is not only on the one frequency, one particular frequency. There is a frequency hopping, and this happens very easily when you will see the police and walkie-talkie as well. So they are not only particularly focused on one particular frequency channel, but they are very quickly changing the frequencies. So in that area case, like let's say if you are trying to jam all of the frequency bands, so definitely your effective power will decrease. So it's really important like what kind of jamming you are using. So that is the other example in which you are trying to jam all of the band. That is the sweep jamming. So it depends like on the different operations, different locations, different devices. It will depend. And the important questions is like, so how exactly military communicate when there is a jamming? So let's say I want to communicate while I'm also doing the jamming. I want to do a jamming attack on my enemy, but I also want to make sure that I am not affected from that particular jamming. So how I can do it? So here you can see on the right side, you can see some different terminologies and different emojis with some different initials. So here A1, AJ, A2, these are the authorized devices of friendly forces. E1, E2, E3 are the devices of enemy. AJ is the jammer, which is a friendly jammer, like we own it. And what we want to do, that we are doing a jamming attack where A1 and A2 should be able to communicate, while we don't want E1, E2, E3 to communicate with themselves because there's a jamming attack. So in that sense, like it's really easy to do it. What exactly we are doing here is we are using the noise as a signature, like jamming is a signature. So there are like pseudo random number generator, if you know the cryptography. So with that, like you can create a jamming signature. jamming power signature that your friendly forces will be knowing. So what they are doing, like let's say they are subtracting that from that jamming signature, they are subtracting their sorry, the actual signal, they are subtracting the jamming signature and they will get the actual signal which they are transmitting. So it's like simple mathematics which they are using. So this is like the actual communication which they are using. They can subtract the jamming signature from it and they will get the actual signal, which is the desired reception. And there are on the right side, like you can see EA-18G, which is interference cancellation system. And this is the aircraft which is doing this particular jamming. So this is how like they are communicating with this aircraft. They were blocking all of the communication in that particular frequency channel, so the enemy forces cannot listen to it, but they were able to transmit. And this all will come into a cyberspace. Right now it's from the defense, but it will all be mapped to cyber. So now NATO has designated cyber as an official domain of warfare. This is really important for us as a security community. And the reason why I am sharing this slide is a very important reason is during the Ukraine-Russia war, you might have observed that government of Ukraine have opened that any civilians or any corporate company should defend the country in the need. They should defend the critical infrastructure. And this is the reason my kind motivation to share this slide is said that Bhuto na bhavishyati, I will never want it, but whenever our country needs it, so that you people should be able to defend and take a stand for India. You should know like how important cyber is. If you don't really know, I will strongly suggest you to go and check like what exactly companies, I'm not talking about the ransomware gangs, I'm not talking about the people who are like trying to do some kind of critical hacking. I'm not talking about that, but from the defender perspective, I'm saying how they are securing their critical infrastructure in the time of cyber warfare. This is why I'm saying like the keen reason to share these particular slides with you. So declaring cyber as an official domain of warfare will definitely allow NATO members to improve planning and better manage resources for cyber defense operations, which mean they could respond to cyber attack with conventional weapon just as they would for any kind of air, land or sea attack. And there are cyber attacks which is happening with the battle tanks, in which army they tested it. Actually they actually US Army tested for themselves, and they were easily able to take off and disable the tank with some electronic warfare technology attack. Because today's battle tank is not only a mechanical machine, but they are using so many different IoT components, different computer networks to map around and to map where exactly they are, to plan the attack, to plan, calculate the kinematics and so many different things. So they are not actually mechanical machines, but they are also using the digital component. And when there is something digital that can be hacked, this is what like we know. Again, there are some network-centric warfare, which is an official domain, and it is a very interesting field to study. When we talk about warfare, we should not ignore the cyber warfare. It is the use of digital attack to attack a nation, causing comparable harm to actual warfare and or disrupting the vital computer systems. So many countries, like I think USA, United Kingdom, Russia, India, Pakistan, China, Israel, Iran, North Korea have their active cyber capabilities for offensive and defensive operations. So they are categorized in three categories, basically. The first is the network, computer network attack. Now I am talking from the military perspective, like how cyber warfare actually means. So computer network attack team, the responsibility of their team is to think of what people, when they think of the cyber warfare, they envision attacks like taking down power grids, envision car being stopped in their tracks, or envision planes coming down. So these are all the responsibilities in theories, possibilities in theories, and they are the responsibilities of the CNA. Then CNA is also like having the responsibility to compromise the computer-based assets and manipulating the systems, like creating or misusing the botnets. So these are all the operations which CNA performs, like for the malicious activities. And Stuxnet is one of the example. If you realize a case of CNA occurred during the invasion of Iraq in 2003, the United States reportedly hacked the Iraqi air defense network, manipulated the display on the Iraqi radar screen to make it appear that aircraft were in different location than they actually were. And Stuxnet, which caused the destruction of the Iranian nuclear centrifuge, it is a clear CNA. Sony hack by North Korea is an example of CNA. There are many such versions of CNA. Now, there's a very famous quote, like from the Art of War. There are not more than 5 musical notes, yet the combination of these 5 give rise to a melodies that can be heard. There are not more than 5 primary colors, yet in combination they produce more hues which can ever be seen. There are not more than 5 cardinal tastes, yet combination of them yield a very different flavors. And now we can imagine about the results from convergence of ground, airborne, naval, space, and cyber. So traditionally, cyber and electronic warfare were distinct entities. So again, like when I said all of the electronic warfare components before, they were pure different component of the defense. But how cyber came and become a part of electronic warfare? So now cyber warfare involves the action by a nation, state, or international organization to attack and attempt to damage another nation's computer or information network. So this is like very interesting field right now which is happening. So it's like this is a very funny meme, because what will the warrior guardian of the future looks like? There will be a cybersecurity people sitting behind and he will say, yo dude, I'm back here. And this is the practically situation we are seeing over right now. There are like ransomware gangs, like Conti ransomware gangs, Lazarus gang. They are doing this kind of attacks, taking down the power grid, taking the oil infrastructures, attacking the, even if you remember, um, there was a blackout last year in Mumbai, and I was reading some of the news sources and it was said like that blackout can be a reason of cyber attack. After that, like I didn't hear any other stories. I came over here in USA, so I didn't follow up much on it, but there was a news articles on some of these things. So might be this is of interesting something for you, so you can go read and do a case study on it. So what exactly happened, I'm not sure, but yeah, there were news. How exactly the warfare actually looks like? So just see this image and observe it. There is an electromagnetic environment in which we are doing all of this information from your television, from our newspaper, from maritime, where they are using so many different kind of electromagnetic systems in our land for all of the artillery, then all of the tanks, our ESM machines, they are using some kind of electromagnetic radiation or environment. In our air, like to do all of the communication, we are using it. Our in space, for all of the satellite communication rocket we are using. So we are in many ways dependent on this electromagnetic spectrum. And this is how the actual wars looks like. Whenever you will see a war, it is not only just like a firing of missiles or firing of guns and targeting people, but this is how the military see the war actually. And there are many projects which is going on by DARPA and Milo. They are working on it, where they are trying to make a map in which they can track all of these frequencies, and they can easily map it on a digital screen so that they can track like what actually is happening. So all of these things, like there are some kind of signal interception taking place. They are blocking the radar, they are tracking the satellites, so they are tracking the missiles so that they can block it and they can target it. So, and this is all happening in the electromagnetic spectrum. So when I say RF security is not limited to your GPS, or sorry, your Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or GPS. There's a much more extendability which you can take it forward. So EW is like a kind of a sleeping beauty, hidden away and forgotten for a generation. Now it is a dragon about to be reawakened. And believe me, NATO leaders who continue to ignore its significance so far, now doing at alliance peril. Now they understood the importance, and now they are like working towards it, that okay, we need to work towards it. So all warfare is based on the deception. Hence, when we are able to attack, we must seem unavailable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When we are far away, we must make him believe that we are near. And these all things can be done with all of the different like different machines which we are using, or different radio antennas and things we are using to do all of these operations. And this is how the convergence looks like. So for me, like this image is really important because like for me, my career shifted very significantly from working in the signal intelligence to working in the cybersecurity operations, then learning about the psychological deceptions, then working towards the telecom security field. So all of these things are like, in a way, there's a convergence which is happening for a military. It's not only a thing like someone who is in the cybersecurity cannot contribute or cannot work towards this. All are dependent, and this is how the modern warfare looks like. It's not only a gun and bullet. Believe me, the next future warfare it's will be totally different. I can skip all of these slides. No, delete. Yeah, here you can see one more interesting thing. Whenever I talk about the critical infrastructure, whenever one critical infrastructure fails, it will make other there's a lot of dependency. So if electric power will fail, definitely it will affect the oil and gas industry. It will affect all of the communication, transportation, water, banking, and finance industries will be affected. So this is how the critical infrastructure is, and they are the lifeline for one another. And I think like you might have all seen that particular movie, but if you have not, I will strongly suggest you to go and watch Die Hard 4 movie, the fourth part of it, in which they have discussed about how the critical infrastructure, if the critical infrastructure is taken down, how will it looks like and what kind of different attacks can be done. And that is like really what will happen if only not even a single bullet is fired, but what a simple cyber warfare can do. So I will strongly suggest you to watch the Die Hard 4 part. And what are the benefits? Like why all of the military, all of the peoples, all of the malicious actors, all of the threat actors, they are switching towards the cyber attacks or cyber weapon. So there are many benefits of like using the cyber weapon rather than kinetic weapons, because kinetic weapons are almost always produce irreversible physical effects, whereas cyber weapons can produce completely reversible effects all through a small fraction of weapons. Like for example, a rubber bullet can deliver a quickly recoverable outcome. Most are intended to produce permanent or slow recovery effect, while cyber weapons can produce permanent damage to the physical world, such as in the case of Stuxnet, which caused physical destruction of centrifuge. Other cyber effect can be completely reversed by either the attacker or by the victim itself. So ransomware is an example. If you have the key, you can completely recover from it and you can reverse it. But if you don't have the key, you cannot. So for example, like let me take one more example. Okay, so when a denial of service attack stops the target systems return to normal, and encryption, such as like when we use in ransomware, that is a reversible action. Important factor is over here to notice it, reversibility. So reversibility can be an asset or limitation of cyber weapon depending on the object of their use. So it is like difficult to reverse engineer and reuse kinetic weapons since they are typically damaged beyond reuse as a condition to of their employment. But cyber weapons are often comprised of very easily replicable software. You can copy paste, and again you have the software, so you can like easily spread it. You can do so many things with it. So these are like some of the benefits of using it. And this was like one of my favorite slide because I'm a big fan of Bhagavad Gita. So you might have heard that for any military organization, for any company, for any organization, there is a command and control, which is the most important part. Until and unless we are not communicating with our friendly Infosys or our team coordination is not there, you will not be able to succeed. So further, like much like I can give one more example of it in a better way. Yeah, this is like a perfect example. So in 19th century, like if you remember, we were using the horse to do the reconnaissance. Before 19th century, actually, we used to send the like Hindi में हम लोग बोलते थे दूत, which we राजदूत या जो जाते थे, and they were trying to figure out what exactly is happening in that particular enemy forces, how they are planning to attack. Then in 20th century, again, we use battle tanks to do the reconnaissance. We used to send the fighter jets to go and monitor the situations. But in 21st century, we have included one more very important factor, which is the cyber domain. And which cyber domain, like the war is happening well before in the cyber domain than in the actual battlefield. So crowdsourced surveillance, future of internet, like more than 125 billion devices will be connected very soon with the internet, which will include all of the computer sensors, IoT devices, World Wide Web. And through that, we can easily monitor all of this information. Like if you will see the Twitter thread, so any kind of cyber attack which is happening will be well before advertised on the Twitter. Any kind of things like which is happening in the community, they will be, someone from the community will be tweeting about it, and from that you can very easily identify. I remember one case, I think it happened in, I'm not sure, in 2016 or 2017. So Israel, we know, like in Israel, every time there is a threat of some kind of missile fire. So there were like someone from the defense, from the enemy forces, they tweeted about that particular incident that, okay, we are firing this many missiles and I can see it in the air. Israel was not actually knowing this. They were, even their sensors and their Iron Dome have not detected it, but they were constantly monitoring the Twitter thread because there was like some conflict going on. So during that time, like they saw that particular tweet and they came into a prospectus. Okay, there is something which enemy is planning against us, and they have incorporated that particular attack which we are not aware of, and our our Iron Dome or our friendly forces or our army is not yet able to get the infosys for that particular recurrence information for that particular incident. But someone from the enemy forces, like not the citizen of that particular force, enemy nations have tweeted about it, and they have confirmed with the pics and videos. So we need to take an actions, and within 15 minutes their after 15 minutes their recurrence team were able to identify that particular threat. But the interesting part was that on cyber domain, that incident was caught 15 minutes before. And at that time, Israel realized that they need to give a very high level of importance to the cyber. They again like published a paper on it after 2 years, and they mentioned like this incident happened with us 2 years back. So this is how I remember. And now they are like, for the recurrence, they are giving a very important prospectus to cyber. So this is like one more example of cyber recurrence. And some of the examples, like I love case studies. So this is ISRT. ISRT mainly stand for surveillance, reconnaissance, and insurgent operations, which we do. So over here, you can see some of the examples. The fitness tracking app Strava gives the location of the secret US Army base, which is a very interesting case study, like which came from the public database. So, which data Strava released this particular database on the Kaggle, so that all of the people's like students can do research on it and learn about it. And this is how from date some security researcher came up with find the location of the US Army base. That's a very interesting case study. You can read about it. Then again, you can see a Russian soldier. So this particular pic was posted by some of this Russian soldier, thinking like war is over and he can easily post it. But this is how, like, they, based on the location which is in the background, people identified it. Okay, this is soldier, the Russian soldier is not in the Russian territory but in the Ukraine territory, and they were found faulty because they crossed the border. So this is how, like, they blamed the Russia. And in one more example, you can see the Russian battle tank. So this is like one of the, again, very interesting case study which no country have accepted yet. But it was like during a time there was one Malaysian aircraft which was taken down by some missiles, if you remember, in which, like, I think 252 passengers died. So no one was knowing like whether it was a Ukraine, whether it was a Russia, or who it was, or whether it was ISIS who actually fired, or by accident, or what. But after the incident, like after 2 or 3 years of date, someone posted this particular photograph in which the date and time was visible, and Russian military equipment is BUK 332 was easily can be seen in that particular slide image, and they predicted, okay, Russia was the culprit who did it. So yeah, it happened, and social media is helping us with all of this recurrence after the period, but definitely no one will accept it. There are like very new emergence tools in the cyber reconnaissance. So your real-time commercial satellite images, then GPS locations database, like the pattern of the analysis, situational analysis of social media. So that all can be a threat. Now, what else on this presentation slide I can say? Give me a minute. I cannot discuss about this. Yeah, I can take some of the examples from here now instead of taking this. I will take an example of drone that I can discuss. Okay, so we all know the drone is like a very complicated and a very interesting thing which is happening in the industry. It originally came as a tool or as a hobbyist tool so that people can take photographs with it, play around with it, and they can do some of the things which are on a good domain to do the operations. But originally it turned out something else, like people are using it for many malicious purposes, for threatening, for doing some of the threats which is not expected, but yeah, we are using it for a very wrong use. So here you can see one example. This is a case study of 2018 in which with some drones, the Kedwick airport, which is like one of the biggest airport again in London, was shut down because of some drones flying around, and more than 33-hour airport closure was there, with a cancellation of more than 1,000 flights, with the disruption of more than 1,50,000 passengers. And what else not? Like they lost more than $2.32 billion. UAV market is like going to be a market share of 11.3 billion in 2018, which will be a 25.39% during this period, according to the CAGR report. So in this particular attack, like we need to understand like what are the long-term casualties of CUAS, which is a counter drone operations or mission success. We must organize and invest in the rapid development, and now India is working towards it. Like Kerala is having their own cyber dome in which they are working towards the drone. And if you remember, on 15th of August this year, last year, from where this all is coming, someone is again threatening and trying to bombard it. So these are some of the problem statement which we can check how exactly we are, why the drone is a very important threat. And the very complex process to understand is the detection, identification, and neutralization. All of these three are different technical challenges, no ideal solution right now, and they all three are context dependent. So between each step, there can be a human delay, legal issues, efficiency impact. So this is really important to understand like why drone security is a challenge. And some of the examples can be like scenario defense for a stadium. So small UAV and micro drones are becoming more and more available to the general public for leisure activities and exploited in commercial applications, such as for like inspection, professional filming, supporting to agriculture or deliverables. So how do we detect drones accessing these restricted areas? How do we discriminate them from natural false targets like large birds? How do we classify between different drones to spot the rogue ones, perhaps like this, those loaded with suspicious payloads? Or how we can use different technologies which have been proposed, but what are the best ones and how we can improve them? So these are some of the questions like which all industry, like all of the drone industry, all of the peoples are right now facing, and all of the government are trying to trying to find a solutions to it, like how they can address these three things. These are some of the examples like what will happen if a fleet of UAV is flying with IED in a stadium, or there is a swarm attack. So let me show you one this video. I'm not sure how many of you might have heard about the slaughter bots, but this is the threat which can be easily done with some modifications of hardware and using the AI with this.
Customer pilots
Give me a
directed
minute.
almost 3,000 precision strikes last year. We're super proud of it.
Can...
It allows you to separate the bad guys from the good. It's a big deal.
The line below is again Zoom bombarded by someone. So ignore it.
Listen, I see some photos here with somebody, and I can see lots of likes. And what's that all about? Oh, wait a minute here. And on your mom, she's on the spy stuff in the military. What?
Wait, over here I think that
Let's
was.
make the decisions. Now, trust me, these were all bad guys. Emotion. To say guns don't kill people. People do. Well, people don't. They get emotional, disobey orders, aim high. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions. Now, trust me, these were
There are so
all
many attacks
bad
like
guys.
which were explained. Let me take one more example, which is
Now
a
that
kind of
is
a jamming and taking the control of that particular drone. So it is, I found it very funny. Check this, it's loading. Check this.
This right here is how I walk my dog. I get my favorite beer, I get my quadcopter, and I just sit back and relax. Enjoy the show. Hey, looking good, Biscuit. All right, let's get some exercise. Pick up the pace. Yeah, Biscuit. What the hell? Crap.
And then someone took the control of that particular drone.
No, 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 no. Oh. Oh my lord. Biscuit! 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 Oh.
Okay. So coming back to the slides. So these are some of the countermeasures like which we are using to counter the drone, which is like some of the examples are drone nets, radar, laser based defense, then GPS fuzzing, EMP signal, physical dome. And all of these are like having a different technology, different challenges, and it depends on what kind of drones we are targeting, whether it's on what altitude it is, then how we are identifying it, then like detection can be RF communication, acoustic, visual, radar, human awareness, machine learning for classifications like whether it is a UAV or a bird, P3 or BPOOP, or like geometry, trilateration that can be used. Then based on the propeller noise, video camera, thermal, IR or laser sensors, then spectrum protocol or AP. So there are many ways, and the key points are distance, tracking, pirate location, accuracy, and the cost. So in this, like the important factor to understand is the moving target defense. So I will not go in much in detail, but yeah, these are some of the drone detection technology and how we differentiate among themselves. And why it is a challenge. So the challenge is because it is really difficult to detect a drone with a human eye. And this is why, like, again, it's really difficult to track sometimes on with traditional radar, because radar is the traditional mechanism for detecting flying vehicles. We know that radar is already deployed by at the even there was one case study, just a minute, I remember, yeah, during 2 years or 1 year back, there was a drone which landed at the White House lawn. There was no potential hazard which happened. The army was very easily able to spot it and take down the drone and take control of it. But we know that radar is already deployed at the White House, but it does not detect that drone very easily. Much like thermal, radar has a hard time picking up these small plastic electric powered drones because that is not what they were created to do. Radar used to detect traditional aircraft, which can be modified to detect small drones, but it will also detect birds. If a drone is alerted by a bird flea, we are flying close to the White House, security personnel would turn off the cameras and the drivers will be out. So there are like many actions which still need to be taken, and there are many researches which is going on. So this is why it's a challenge. I can switch to this particular slide, and then we can end the technological advances which is happening and what will be the future trend. So with this slide, after this we can like end. I can take one more example of this. Which you can check. I think you might have seen this particular video before, in which like there was someone who tried to make the deepfake just for the educational purpose, like how deepfake will
We're entering
affect.
an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you, and stay woke, bitches.
So we know like what deepfakes can do, and there are many researches which is still going on to identify whether this is a deepfake or it is not. There are many images which you will see find online on so many different social media accounts, which we never know whether that is an actual person or that image is created by the AI. So and again, like national security community believes it is only a matter of time before the nation states move from their cyber security war to space-based assets like satellites. And if you know, like there were many discussions 4 or 5 days before going on whether Russia will be attacking the satellites or not, and so many things were happening because that is like the next asset or next warfare things which military may do, because all of the communication, all of the things is dependent on that for the reconnaissance and all the operations. So purpose of targeting satellite would be an attempt to disrupt communication, information streams vital for commerce and security. And China, Russia, India, and USA, so many other nation states possess the capability already to do cyber attack on a very high frontier. So the threat is like both kinetic and non-kinetic, and countermeasure capabilities are emerging in the Chinese and Russian militaries. But again, like that is not up to date level right now. Satellites could be targeted through electronic warfare like jamming and spoofing, microwave weapons, laser dazzling, and performing most worryingly cyber attacks. So the prospects of cyber attack on satellite dramatically expand the scope and risk of counter space threats for number of reasons. Countries like China and India, Russia, and even Iran and North Korea are highly experienced in waging cyber warfare, and directing such attacks towards satellite is something they could do now and very relative at very low cost. Future advances can be like in computational power, communication network, sensor technology, EM spectrum exploitation, space-based assets, non-kinetic systems. So these are some of the potential areas where military is highly investing to do a research, and of course on counter drone solutions and to safeguard the critical infrastructure. So I will check if I can find one. Yeah, this is one more thing which I would like to share, and then we can. this was very interesting video, like which was said by World Economic Forum, and we can see like how the what are the different threats in critical infrastructure, and we can say like future wars will be fought with 4-to-1 ratio of non-military, mainly cyber to military measures, and such interferences are indeed an act of war. So the decisions we take today define the future we get tomorrow. So the move to wireless network obviously will open the door to increased use of jamming over other EW methods. How would that reconstruct influence military operations, open air architectures? So these are all some of the things which I will suggest you all to think about. And in conclusions, like I will only say the combined effect of non-federated network, encoded data on the network, increased use of wireless network, advances in high power jammer will continue to push the realm of cyber and electronic warfare, and the growth in these two realms will undoubtedly continue bringing changes to future warfare that will be move the center of focus from kinetic operations to that of non-kinetic. The threat of overpowering cyber and EW forces will likely generate increased funding of non-kinetic research, and this is like what is happening. We are funding more to non-kinetic research than to the kinetic research. Then could this be the next Cold War or just the unseen war? So think about it. And with this, these are some of the references. And yeah, now I'm open to questions. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on via email, or you can drop me a text on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for attending the talk. I hope you have learned something new about the current landscape, and yeah, when the country needs, go and defend for it. Thank you. Over to you, Nikhil sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harshit sir. This is Kshitija, member of the core team. Nikhil sir is not available right now due to some of his other commitments, but that's okay. We all students, Nikhil sir, members of the core team, and all the attendees present here, thank you for such an insightful session. I mean, I had never attended a session which gives me theory, which gives me concepts, which gives me beautiful YouTube video links. Then there is mathematical equations also. Then there are live examples and how to relate things that are happening around us. Like the simple example which you gave, like a grid failure. How is that got to do with the economy, and how is that got to do with global politics? So that insight was really nice. So thanks for such a valuable session. And I mean, no words. I mean, how much ever I speak, it will be like something or the other will be left out. So thanks is a very small word, but we are all grateful for you, for your time in a different time zone. So over to everyone for the questions. At the same time, it is 11:56. So questions will start. I'll also post the quiz link maybe by 12 noon. And we'll keep it open for 20 minutes. So sir can answer questions in the meanwhile. People can maybe drop their questions in the chat box, or they can unmute themselves and ask. The quiz link will be shared at 12 noon and it will be kept open for 20 minutes. I hope that is clear to all. Yeah. So over to the participants for questions. Yeah. So there's a feedback, sir, for you from Rishit. He's saying it was an amazing session. Presentation skills and depth of knowledge were very nice. And the delivering method, he said, it's like a 200 on 100.
Thank you so much. I'm honored with all these kind words and gratitude. And definitely, like, even I am a student just like you, so I will strongly suggest you all to look towards the research perspective, because whatever we are doing in the cyber perspective, we are don't always use the traditional purpose of just using the tool. So even I have never looked into the web security, but let's say if we are doing a web security and if we are involved in that, so don't only look like just use the burp suit, or don't use the traditional tool, but just try to understand how that tool is actually working, what is happening in background of it, how exactly that, how we can do the manual analysis, which is beyond the traditional analysis, or what that scanners is not able to search, how we can do it. And that is how like you will learn so many things about cybersecurity. At least what this is what I have learned after coming here in USA and meeting so many people from critical infrastructure, from federal peoples, from different peoples. Like this is what I have learned, that whenever we are looking at any tool, whenever we are looking at any kind of cybersecurity concepts or learning anything, look it from the depth perspective. And this is what like my suggestions would be for all of you.
Yes, thank you, sir. So, Prasad, could you please unmute Rishit Pundange? He wants to ask a question. And in the meanwhile, I'll read out another question which is there in the chat box. So this question is from Biraj. What is the general frequency range that most of the IoT devices work?
Okay, so all of the IoT devices like which we commercially use is either working on the ISM band, and if not ISM band, then the other commercial devices just like our smartphones, or some of them which are affiliated and registered with the FCC license. So they all are typically working in a frequency range of 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. And you can easily listen to that particular frequency if you have the HEC RF device, Blade RF, or USRP. So I didn't discuss about much of the hardware, but typically there are much widely used 4 different hardware. One is the RTL HDR. RTL HDR can only listen to the frequencies, it cannot transmit it. It only works from 1 megahertz to 2 gigahertz. So you can do like most of the operations with this. And if you want to get started, I will strongly suggest you to get started with the RTL, because it is a $20 or $10 devices. It comes with different frequency calibration range. So that will be a really easy short investment, and you can find a lot of resources to get started. If you want to do like more in depth of it, then you can go with the HEC RF, but the HEC RF is half duplex, so it can either transmit or it can either receive, but not both at the same time. So for that purpose, like we have a Blade RF which can transmit and receive at the same time, but that is slightly expensive, because I think Blade RF which I have costed me something around 700 USD. In India it costs more. Then on a very high range we have USRP, which is available to the civilians very easily. And there are many hard HDR, but these are some of the HDR which are very easily available. Lime HDR is again really good platform, good HDR to get started. There are a lot of resources available for it. So I will suggest you to use the HDR which is having a good backend support, and to look into the frequency range of 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. This is where like all of the operations are taking place. Someone asked the question, while exploiting a Lime HDR, we were not provided Lime HDR. So it was tough to create an exploit to take signals from HDR and open a reverse cell in terminal. Any methodology to get the signal from transmitter? I think you are mistaken with how we use the Lime HDR. Lime HDR cannot give you the reverse cell in terminal, because this is like just capturing the signal. You are playing on the signal level, on the physical level, not on the transport layer or network layer. So you will never get the terminal or reverse cell, just like what we do with the Wi-Fi based attack. Here you are just playing with the signal, with the raw signal, and with that raw signal you are trying to identify some information. So that particular attack will work on the network in network or transport or session or application layer, not on the physical. So I think you are confused with some concepts.
Yeah, so before we take the next question, I have posted the quiz link 2 minutes back. So it's open, and I request everyone to submit their responses. Again, clarifying, by 20 minutes, we do not mean that you have to submit at 12:20. It will close at 12:20. So ensure that you have submitted your responses before 12:20.
Someone asked, like, can some government shut down the entire nation's internet remotely during cyber warfare, or does it require an insider with an on-site access? So that typically depends, like what kind of, how they are planning that cyber warfare. So if you will follow the trade, I think it was discussed 7 days before, when someone, I think from Ukraine or some organization mentioned that Russia should be entirely cut from the internet. Like they were trying to block the DNS servers and the typical link which we are using for the TCP communication. Like they were trying to block that particular channels and that particular hope, so that they will not be able to communicate with any of the Russian site, or Russian peoples will not be able to access the internet without a proper hope channel. So like they were trying to break the BGP link with Russia. But this is like what will be the potential impact if they do it, or what will happen, what are the hazards. And so this is the way like they can do. But if with a cyber attack, it's really difficult because there are like so many companies working towards it. So I don't think like it is possible, because it's not only a one router or one hop is connected. I am talking from the router from a perspective of BGP. So it's only a one, not only a one hop, but there are so many hops, there are so many backend systems. So even if you will see like whenever we see there is some optical fiber cables which we have in the oceans, which are connecting different nations. So there is not only one fiber optic cable, they have like 2 or 3 in as an backup. So whenever they are doing a maintenance work, they switch it very frequently, switch from one to different. So this happens very frequently like during the maintenance. But yeah, taking down an entire nation's internet, I don't think it is practically any with a single cyber attack anyone can do it, because not only we are using the internet with the wired connectivity, but with satellite, with the different telecom operators, we have different kind of services we are using. So it's not only the one service link which is connecting the nation. There are so many ways. Is there any other questions, or else you can reach out to me on LinkedIn? You can always email me, and whenever I will get a time, I will definitely reach back to you.
Yes, Uday Bhettu. Fine. Yeah, next question is best hardware certification. So that is one question which has been popping up frequently.
So I'm not sure about the hardware, like much about the hardware hacking certifications, but I will suggest you to look into the same certifications. I remember there was one. ICS 610 is for. I check for the same certification, because there is really one interesting same certification. And look for the hardware hacking training by Sebastian Dudek. I attended his one of the training, and he's like the man who knows the cybersecurity. And for hardware hacking, rather than going for the certifications, I will suggest you to check hardware.io site. There you will find like enormous amounts of talk, webinar, training content. So that will be the best tool to learn. For the certifications, like honestly, there are more than 4,000 different cybersecurity certifications, and honestly, I have not done even a single, because it's like it's a kind of a proxy market. So the more you invest, the more will be there. So it's like just skill is the thing. Keep learning and check the hardware.io site. Yeah, definitely Sense is costly, so there are many alternatives to it. Check the TCM security if they have it, check the pen testing academy if they have it, check the Pio2 security if Pio2 is having the exploit.io. So check that like if that is feasible for you. So there are so many alternatives. It's not like Sense is the only source. Someone asked my LinkedIn. Yeah, definitely I can share the link in the chat. Give me a minute.
Sir, there is another question. Like, what is your
LinkedIn.
view?
You can. Yeah, sorry, I was not able to hear.
Yeah, so what is your view on yesterday's missile drop which happened in Pakistan? So
yeah, I saw that. Like he was constantly asking during the chat session as well. So that was like an incident. Even Indian government have published a paper like guidelines on it, that it was during maintenance. During the maintenance operation, it happened by mistake, and there was no payload, there was no catastrophic or any kind of things which happened, no casualty. It was just a maintenance operations which Pakistan observed, and they informed the Indian government, and Indian government itself like notified Pakistan army that okay, this was just by an incident and we are really sorry about it. They have even published a paper and they are looking into it, like how exactly they were able this happened. So it was not a kind of any kind of situation like which was intentionally. And of course, like during the Russia Ukraine war, India is right now stuck in so many different difficult situations. India will never ever take any such steps. So that was typically a incident which happened, not an yeah. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or you can drop me an email, and definitely I will reach back to you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much once again. And thank you, Nikhil sir, for inviting and having me here. This was like a really great opportunity for me to interact with so many students, and I will wish best of luck to all of you to a very happy career in cybersecurity. Keep learning, keep exploring. A career in cybersecurity is like never ending. You will be a student when even if you are age of 60 years. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Harshit sir, for enlightening our interns, and thank you everyone, the audience also, for listening to him very well. So I'll just request everybody to turn on the video for a group photo. Nowadays, this is a virtual group photo. That is what. So Prasad from our team, I'll just request you, Prasad, just take a screenshot of everyone. Okay. So just everyone for a while, just turn on your video so that we can just take a group picture.
Oh, yeah, just a minute.
Yeah. You can tell us when you are done. Also, everyone, we request you to fill the feedback form also, which will be sent into the chat and Telegram channel as well.
Yeah, it's done.
I will strongly ask for something. If there is any critical criticism, please do share that in feedback form, because like we all are learning and I'm just like a student like you. So that will definitely help me in future to improve the sessions and to improve the talk. So if there is any suggestions you have to make the presentations or to delivering a content in a better way, so I always support the critical criticism. So if you have it, go forward for it.
So, Arshit sir, I will share you the feedbacks, whatever the students are giving feedback. That is not an issue.
Yeah, sure. Like, because that will definitely help me. So
Yes,
I will
yes,
request.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So thank you very much, Harshit sir, and good night at your end. I know it is too late. What is the time there? No?
It's a 2 p.m. 2 a.m. here.
2
It's
a.m.
perfectly
Oh,
like
okay.
learning is always a thing. So I always look forward to support the community.
Yeah, I totally understand and agree with you. So,
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
thank you very much for your valuable time, Harshit sir. Thank you, everyone. And Prasad, just once you're done with the form, you can just close the Zoom room. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir, sure.
So quiz is still on, and once you are done with the quiz form and the feedback form, you can exit. Okay. Thank you. So till the time of quiz, the Zoom meeting will be on. So everyone who is done with this feedback form and quiz form can exit. Okay.
I shared in chat.
So it's 12:20. We are closing the form, quiz form now. Requesting Prasad to close it. I hope everyone has submitted the responses.
Yes, sure, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. So the feedback form link which was shared earlier was a shared mistakenly. I've shared another link which is the actual feedback form for the session. So just submit your feedback. So as Harshit sir rightly said, it is very necessary for any speaker or any expert to know how the session went. So submit your honest feedbacks, give appreciation, and thank you everyone for joining the session. Once your feedback form is submitted, it's okay for you to leave the session today. Thank you. We will end the meeting shortly.